feeling like it was a movement and that it wasn't about me was the most convincing aspect, being like, oh yeah, I'll do this because it's a bunch of crazy people and this will be fun.
Yeah. Because all of you got into this like movement first, that's defined, I mean, your actions since you got elected, right? And everyone else is like, man, this is weird. Why are you doing this weird stuff? Well, it's because it's a different, you didn't come in.
It's a different start.
Yeah. There's so much reaction to the divergence that our actions represent in DC, but really they've been consistent the entire time. It's just that people,
they weren't paying attention.
Right? Yeah, just like the only thing that's changed is that people pay attention now. I've literally been live streaming my life and our political actions since 2016.
Yeah.
I've literally been movement first and accountable to social movements the entire time I've been running for office.
Right. It's really most people that change, right? Like they get elected and then they're like, okay, campaign's done.
There's a lot of people in the Democratic caucus. When we are courageous enough to just puncture the silence on an issue, they will start to move. Don't people realize that the most powerful position you can be in is when you are not materially attached to a position of power? If you're a one-term Congress member, so what? You can make 10 years worth of change in one term if you're not afraid.
Welcome to another episode of the Nick and CJ. I'm surprised you made it that long, Nick, without some sort of sound. I was like, he must have his sound muted, because I had to mute my sound and not even come on camera because it's excruciating watching that clip. But welcome to another episode of the Nick and CJ show. I'm one of your hosts. I'm CJ. What's up, Nick?
What's going on, CJ? I always love the clips that you play in the beginning. Like I'm wondering, like, do AOC fans remember anything she said?
I don't think they do. And this stream is actually gonna sort of examine. I mean, not just that. That's part of what's gonna be exposed. Not that anyone doesn't know a lot of this information, but just thought we need to take a sort of deep dive look. And I've been literally probably watched about a good 15 hours of people like Sam Cedar, people like Emma,
Cedar,
like they're old
for us.
like from 5 years ago, trying to find the genesis of this, where they talk about this strategy so I can hear what was this supposed to start out as. But before we get into the meat of the discussion, let's make sure we do a chat check and do a like check. So let's see who's in the chat and just shout everybody out. You can do that both, Nick. If you see somebody before me, go ahead. So there goes Bryce right there. Yeah, I see a lot of regulars here. There she goes. How you doing? Who else we got here? Yes, absolutely. Oh, I'm trying to scroll down. I should have started at the top, so my bad. And what it says: if there is a afterlife, I picture Karl Marx face planting a lot. Wow.
That's the one who had to take that. His Twitter.
Yeah. Right. Justice Democrat equals just a Democrat. Love it. I'll do a couple of more greetings and peace. Greetings and peace all. Absolutely. And let's do this.
Shout out to AOC too. Go ahead.
Case study. Yeah, absolutely. AOC reminds me of the head of our HR department. But like he was saying, shout out to Case Study. Case Study's gonna be coming on. There he goes right there. What's up? He's gonna be coming on in the second hour, or after hour one, I should say, sometime after hour one, to talk about building alliances. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, since we're talking about guests, I'm gonna have Delilah on and Unapologetic on tomorrow. We're gonna talk about policing. But I'm also super excited because Wednesday, Ben Norton. I'm gonna have Ben Norton on. We're gonna talk about what happened in Colombia. So
right on. That is. I was watching his interview today on. I was watching his interview today on.
Yeah, I watched that. I literally reached out to him. So I was like, I don't know if it's gonna work, but I reached out to Ben Norton. He said,
"Oh, you saw the same one then?" Oh,
yeah,
because I watched that interview today, and it's just amazing. We'll pause right here about our topic, but it is amazing. You can leave a Case Study because I want to make sure I shout him out. But it's amazing what's happening down in the global South. I just want some of that to rub off on the Americans here, like to that sense of we can take control of our government, of our own destiny from these capitalist pigs. I just wish we get that.
the boutique left would have told Francia Marquez, "You're being unrealistic."
Exactly.
You ain't going through the
Now,
proper channels, Francia. You was a housekeeper.
right.
Go through the proper channels. Okay?
Now she's a first black to celebrate, not Clarence Thomas, not Kamala Harris. This is what you call a first black VP that you would want to celebrate in a position like this. And we did a stream several months ago on her when we first heard of her. Just the mummerings of her, the possibilities of this happening, and it actually happened where her and the top of the ticket have won, which is great. So shout out to the global South that we want to be like you. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, and you guys gotta understand, Gustavo Pedro, who won, he's more like a social democrat style progressive,
right?
But he's not going to wage this endless war against Nicolas Maduro like the fascist government in Colombia was. He said they're gonna recognize Maduro as president, they're gonna normalize tensions. That's huge. But Francia Marquez is significantly to the left of Gustavo.
Right.
So me and Josana, we was talking about Lula. One of the big criticism of Lula that he reached out to someone that's significantly to his right as vice president. No, Gustavo went hard to his left. Garcia Marquez called for ending the drug war. She called for land reform, which Gustavo also supports. She supports reparations for Afro-Colombian, Afro-Indigenous people that was killed by the military. And the last thing I'm going to say on this, because I know we're really going to dive in with this with Ben Noren, because I've been covering Colombia for a while. We covered it for a few months. So this was an extremely exciting victory for me. But I don't want you guys to get your hopes up too much. Because, like, I'm not exaggerating here. Like, there's a good chance the military might kill these people. And I'm not exaggerating because the military generals were literally threatening him out in the open. When they used to have campaign speeches, Gustavo and Francia, they used to have giant riot shields that would protect them because political assassination in Colombia is normal as hell. It's a mafia state. But we're going to dive a lot more into it when Ben Noren get here. I covered it a little bit on my call-in this morning. So it's like, anyway, you guys see, I'm super excited about it because there's just another blow to U.S. domination in South America, right? So I'll pass it back to you, CJ, because I don't want to hijack conversations too much, but we're going to talk about it when I have Ben Noren.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very, very important conversation. This I'm learning too at the same time because I didn't know. You just locked this up today, then.
Yeah, I was I following the election. I knew what election was happening. I'll be honest. I didn't think they would win because obviously the first Colombian leftist president. It was something on my radar, but I was not expecting to celebrate their victory at all. The military, like Gustavo, is gonna have so much hell because technically the military in Colombia is not supposed to get involved in politics, but that is not the case.
Never. That's never the case.
Extremely corrupt country where you had the military that was actively campaigning against Gustavo. You have Congress that is extremely far right in Colombia as well. So they're going to be fighting them every step in the way. But the political parties and activism that Francia Marquez came from, they literally had leaders that was assassinated by the military. You understand that? Like people that she marched hand in hand with was assassinated. So this is a real possibility. And this neoliberal militaristic fascist regime from Colombia was backed by the West.
The United States.
And last thing I say, and I'll pass it right to you, CJ. I covered this at the time. It was last year where there was this giant wave because there was all these protests that were protesting the neoliberal economic policies of Ivan Duque in Colombia. And then there was police and military that was executing protesters in the streets. And there's no mechanism for them to get justice at all. So whenever you see the United States, Ron DeSantis was like, "Oh my God, authoritarianism, totalitarianism." Just know the United States was literally supporting a government that had fucking fascist military that was executing working class movements in Colombia. The military was doing illegal invasions into Venezuela and killing leftist supporters of Nicolas Maduro. So all the people were like, "Oh my God, Ukrainian sovereignty." They were 100% okay with the United States backing the state that was doing that. But I'm gonna cover this a lot more. Like
this is a lot. No, it's a lot, and it's important to cover because they were just elected, and so this kind of takes front of mind as far as thinking about because the powers that be don't take this type of thing lightly. But we can move into the main story of the stream, which is just a deep dive examination of the progressive Dem inside strategy, their whole plan, where it came from. And I'll start here with some of the graphics we made for this stream. So when we're talking about the progressive strategy, which is the inside strategy, otherwise known as the Justice Democrats, this is the group that most popularized it most recently, the inside strategy. So here is what it has become. So we're gonna travel back in time. So I'm gonna kind of, with these graphics, just kind of describe what it is now, and talk about how it could not have possibly been the initial goal of the Justice Democrats, of the progressive inside game, to be what it is today. But let's examine what it is today, Nick. And of course, I would say one of the number one things is don't be too radical. And of course, Ayanna Pressley exemplifies that. I don't even know why she's even added with the squad. She doesn't project to be as left as they are. Go ahead.
And I'll just quickly interject here. She was a Hillary Clinton stan, guys.
Exactly.
She was literally like edging on supporting Hillary over Bernie Sanders. But she was absorbed by the squad because she was a black woman who was elected not too long ago. She was already elected before the squad, but they like adopted her, and that's the most shady part, because remember, it was her who was telling Ilhan Omar and Cori Bush that we don't vote as a bloc. It was Cori Bush who let that cat out of the bag, where she was like, "Oh, my dear sister," she was telling me, "Oh, we don't vote as a bloc. We vote individually. We represent our constituent." That was her. That was Cori Bush quoting her. So why was she put as the leader of the squad? To keep them in line.
Right. And that's what I feel we're going to uncover. I mean, people already know this, but we're going to examine today is that who the Justice Democrats started out to be, what they projected to us, is significantly different. And they said it out in the open, the changes that were made. They said it out in the open, a lot of these changes, but they're significantly adding, like, for example, Ayanna Pressley, according to how this was supposed to be in the beginning, no way she should have been a part of this. Rokana should have never been added to this. Pramila Jayapal is another one that should have never been added to this. City.
Yeah, looking back at it, right? Like, we've been talking about how the squad and these progressive Democrats have been PR for the Democrat Party. Looking back at it, right? Doesn't seem like the election of the squad was an amazing opportunity to give a political makeover to many of these fucking sellouts, like Pramila Jayapal, like Ayanna Pressley and Ro Khanna. So as soon as the squad was elected in 2018, they was like, we're gonna jump on that wagon. Even though she was a fucking Hillary Clinton stan. Like, there was an interview I saw a long time ago where she was like, all the people who questioning the qualifications of Hillary Clinton, she's gonna be a great leader. She's gonna be a great female person. And that was the person who was absorbed by the squad. And like, oh, look at this person who's a progressive. I'm like, are you guys kidding me? And when I saw that, it was later. Right? I was never big on her train, even when I was more on the Bernie wing of the progressives. I was always like, who the fuck is this? And then I looked at her old interviews. I looked at her old votes. I'm like, why is she
terrible? Pretty terrible, huh? Pretty terrible. No, we already mentioned this one, but don't vote as a group. And of course, people like Jamal Bowman and you're mentioning Ayanna Pressley fall into that. Another category or another strategy that seems to be their strategy is disappear on key issues. I mean, this applies to a lot of people. I tried to match up the strategy with one of the people that was doing it, or at least the person doing it. But this particular one, a lot of them disappear on key issues. In particular, Israel-Palestine and the Palestinian fight and the Palestinian struggle. Your comments?
Yeah, not only that, I lost all respect for Cori Bush recently. You guys remember that stream I did that was pulled? That like 2.5 hour stream. One of the segments I did was, and I don't think a lot of you guys saw it because it was fucking buried in the stream. It was pulled. Cori Bush went on Stephen Colbert's show, and then she was pretending that the eviction moratorium, that political stuff,
Yeah.
they was pretending that it was successful and they prevented people from being homeless. And then throughout the entire segment, they refused to bring up the fact that eviction moratorium was struck down and people were immediately kicked out of their homes. And I'm talking about this. There was a segment that was done maybe like 5-6 weeks ago. So this is something that they did when they knew the results of it.
Yeah.
But you were on Stephen Colbert, and he was like, you got some stuff done, didn't you? She was like, yeah, I slept at the steps, and I got the eviction moratorium inspired. And then he was like, yeah, you did a good job. And then they moved on.
Yeah, you see how they water down what's doing something? Like, you see what I mean? Like, you water it down so much because that's all you've done. It's like, yeah, then that's something. I did this, and it's like that's not really materially doing anything. It was struck down, as to your point.
And then when AOC was asked about the fact that the eviction moratorium, this fight is not over, she was like, turn up the music. we're not trying to hear that shit.
Oh, did she do it like Nina Turner? Remember that stream, man? I couldn't stop laughing.
We're gonna be
she
all
was
right.
like,
we're gonna be all right.
Oh, that shit was hilarious. That stream.
Guys, that was essentially what AOC and Cory Bush's response was when she was asked. When they was asked the question about the eviction moratorium, they essentially were like, "We're gonna be all right." I cannot unsee that. But go ahead, CJ.
And then speaking of Nina Turner, completely turn your back on don't talk about BDS. Don't bring it up. And when I say BDS, it also includes don't talk about the struggle of the Palestinians in any length or detail. So that's Nina Turner, and I believe she turned her back on Palestinians. I think you were reporting this in the stream. She turned her back on Palestinians in the BDS movement to try to reach out to those Jewish voters that dumped her last time, and they still attacked her. Even though, they still attacked her.
It's so dumb. It seems like they don't care about winning, at least, because the idea is that you're gonna sell out the left. You're gonna depower your base. You're gonna make the people who care the most about you winning, right? The left. You're gonna make them sour on you in order to win over AIPAC and white suburban voters who don't like you in the first place. Can someone please explain to me the logic in these decisions? But we're called out as divisive for calling out their lack of logic.
Makes no sense, Nick. Yeah, and the thing is, it's like we say, hey, if you're really trying to win, that's actually not what you should be doing, or that's counterproductive. Oh, why are you being so divisive? What?
Negative Nancy's.
Yeah.
I remember Jordan was like, you got to understand the district. The district has a certain makeup. You can't be super progressive. So this dumbass didn't even support reparations in a district that majority black. So they have no strategy.
No strategy. And the thing is, Nick, when I was doing this, watching all these videos, it was quite surprising seeing some people who are now enemies in the same video discussing, like, these aren't enemies, but like seeing like Jordan and Jank and Nominky and Emily talking in one video about this strategy, seeing Jank ask Jimmy Dore, like, I saw all this video. I saw like video of AOC being interviewed by Ryan Graham and BJG, just to see how far we've come. But I'm getting off track. Let me get back on track. So never challenge leadership in a real way. Can you speak to that, Nick? How they never challenge leadership. It's almost like when she says, we don't do this as a bloc. This is one thing they do as a bloc, is to never challenge leadership.
AOC defers all important foreign policy decisions to caucus leadership. She literally said it. They know not to cross Mama Bear. Are they calling out January 6th hysteria while working class families starve? We literally had to look south. I had to go all the way to fucking Brazil to find a leader, Lula, who was like, you Americans are fucking crazy. You guys are sending $55 billion to Ukraine while your babies are starving. It's not our babies that are starving. This is an America problem. If only we could have AOC or Bernie say something like that. These are examples of what it means to actually challenge party leadership. They refuse to do that. They talk about stuff they know party leadership would never do in the first place. Oh, I want Medicare for all. Okay, that's not challenging them because they're not going to put it up.
Right.
So they never would challenge the Democrat Party on the decisions they make. The decisions they make, the squad will never challenge them. Why are you guys why AOC and Cory Bush not saying, why are you guys running on expanding the police in 2022 despite the massive defund the police movement that had 55% independent support. So no one in the squad gonna raise this question. See, me and CJ, we don't give a fuck because I don't give a fuck if Democrats lose. But if you give a fuck about Democrats losing, when you be like, hey yo guys, we're going off track here a little bit. They're not even doing that because they don't get the finger wag at them by
they don't want to get the mighty hand of Mama Pelosi. But Kyle is the one who made the case. Cenk kind of took the reins after Kyle made the case. People were referring to Kyle. Did you see Kyle, his explanation of why it has to be the Democratic Party and not a third party? Because believe it or not, Nick, a lot of these people who are now not down with the Democratic Party, David Dole, and I'm not quite sure though about Mike Figueredo, he might still be. They were fully 5 years ago in these conversations. They were fully on board. Even David Dole ran as a Green Party candidate in Canada. I didn't know that. I found that out. While looking at these videos, he ran as a Green Party candidate in Canada. That guy. Wow. That's how he started doing these videos. He started doing those because he was running, and then one day he just started doing them, every day, and he, and they was helping each other, swapping audiences back then. Him and Mike. So. Found a lot of interesting stuff in doing, deep dive in this particular topic. And then you have the guy behind the failed strategy. Without Cenk, there would be no Justice Democrats because Cenk had the platform to push it. Cenk had the ability to raise funds for it. So without Cenk, there would be no Justice Democrats, and there wouldn't be this sort of like baked in idea of the inside strategy of the progressive Democrats. That essentially comes from this guy right here. After watching all these videos here,
and I heard the arguments from a few of these people who are against third parties, and once you start really thinking about the argument, you see how fast it falls apart. Where these same people will say stuff like, "Well, yeah, I know the working class wasted over $100 million on the Bernie campaign," but then they would turn around and say, well, I know we wasted that much money, but it was a good thing that we at least spread awareness, right? That we at least fighting for our ideas, and that helped shift the country to the left. Meanwhile, that is literally what a third-party movement in this country would do.
Exactly.
But they was like, well, what's the point of doing that? Because third parties will never win. Nigga, Bernie didn't win. That didn't stop you from supporting him.
I said
progressives are losing. They ain't stopping you. They're not stopping you from supporting them.
I said the same thing. I said the same thing when I was on BJG's call-in show.
Yeah, I think I probably got it from you.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I'm like, they're not winning now. So what is the difference? You will be spreading the same message that you claim you want it or that you have. Go ahead.
And the reason why I advocate for a third party because I'm actual anti-imperialist. A lot of people pretend they're anti-imperialist, but they're not. I'm actually worried about the climate crisis. A lot of people who pretend they worry about the climate crisis are not. These are just two issues. I can go forever. I'm just keeping myself short, right? Let's take these two issues. If you want to solve these two issues, those two issues are not being solved through the Republican or Democratic Party. It literally does not matter how many Democrats you voted for. And that would be like a 50-year project to replace every single person.
Exactly.
So if you want those things to change, we have to get started on the third party right now. Like when you hear third-party leaders talk about this issue, we understand the challenges that we face in uplifting a third party. But I am asking you guys, imagine what we would be at right now if we started back then instead of having people like Cal and Cenk was like, well, third parties technically sound like a good idea, but they will never win. Like,
right.
We will fucking be there if for decades we didn't have people say third parties didn't win.
Talking us out of it.
You just support the third party, get your friend to support third party, and let the movement grow. Their job is to get in front of that movement and to stop it from growing. That's why we're in the position we're in right now. And these people wouldn't be nihilists, right, CJ? If they wasn't being nihilists, if they wasn't like, oh my God, what's the point? We're gonna lose anyway if we support third party. We would be at least, and this is me being conservative, we will be at least 5% in Green Party getting funds. When you get 5%, they never explain this on their show. You get 5% of the vote, you get federal funding. You get federal funding, then what? You can start to grow your fucking party.
Could you imagine AOC and Bernie Sanders running under the Green Party banner and how that would,
bro? They will immediately
what they would do to that party. What they would do to that party if they were ran. I mean, it would do, but that's specifically why they don't do it. because they're not here to really make change like that. They're just here not to really rock the boat, but they want to appear that way.
And plus, I was talking to Jimmy on Savage Calling, and he knows, like, if you run for the third party, if you're that person who disrupts the political theater, like, they will ruin your life. AOC is living an unbelievably comfortable existence. Right. Don't listen to her when she's like, "Oh my God, I'm a victim. People are so mean to me. I got January 6th." Don't. Ro Khanna explained in one of his interviews. You know how Ro Khanna go on Brown and Joy Gray? He recently went on. There was like maybe 2 interviews ago where Brown was like, "Oh, why do you actually come on these shows even though you get your ass beat every time?" And Ro Khanna actually gave a great answer. Like, Ro Khanna said, "You got to understand, when you're a member of the United States Congress, you're not only just the 1%, you are the top 1% of 1% of privilege. Think how many people are more privileged than a member of Congress?"
Right.
You're not. So that was his argument. He's like, "Yo, I acknowledge how privileged I am. I at least should be able to talk to people." And credit for him for doing that, even though we all know he's trying to.
Yeah. That is one good thing that he does. That is,
he pretends to be a victim. The squad continue to be a victim. You are a member of fucking Congress. Literally one of the most powerful, one of the most pampered people with the most benefits, security details. So you got people cooking
everything
all the time, free.
Everything.
You got people travel everywhere for free.
Right.
For free.
The way rappers rap, they're living that life. Like, they're really living that life. The life that rappers describe, they're literally like, Nancy is blowing money like this, like, making that shit rain everywhere. That's what Nancy Pelosi
became a
doing.
January 6th hysteria account where she keep talking like, she was like, "I still remember the trauma of that day." I still remember the trauma. There are people going homeless. Nigga, we don't have no care in the middle pandemic. You talking about your boutique trauma? You get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here.
And Pramila also says, "Don't stand firm on your principles." I mean, a lot of them exemplified this particular trait, but Pramila, according to what she stands for and what she's always been willing to just compromise from caving on the vote of the BBB. Now that I'm for the BBB, but from their perspective, that was their thing, from caving up from the ridiculous excuse of the not to participate and force a vote is going to kill the movement. And that brings me to this guy. Don't force the vote. That's also a progressive strategy, is don't force the vote. And now that his face comes on there, I understand why I have a better understanding, Nick, why reformist leftists, you refer to them as boutique left and media, are so bought in on this. They're the ones who sold us on it. They're the ones who took our hand and brought us to this plank where we're at the edge of this plank. That's why they are so invested. Because I'm listening to these conversations, Nick, where literally before the end of this is happening, they're taking over the Democratic Party. All these conversations where Cenk is in it, Michael Tracy was in it at the time. I didn't see where Jimmy was in the conversation of the formulation, but after it was formed, they asked him about it. But I'm hearing like I'm hearing like Nomiki, I'm hearing like Jordan, all the people, Nick, who happen to still stand for these people. The ones who push this idea from the genesis. Your thoughts on that, Nick?
So you guys know the whole force to vote thing. I have debunked the horrific, shitty logic of these anti-force to vote leftists, and it's so bad. Like, there's some things like, oh, that's a disagreement. Me and CJ have a small disagreement there. This is one of them things where you have this disagreement was so large, it fractured the left, and I think it was a good thing because we need to weed a lot of the establishment bootlickers out, because they was arguing stuff like, they would say stuff that was completely ahistorical. They would say, well, if we force the vote and it loses, that would hurt the movement. That was Pramila Jayapal said. Yeah, and then her sycophants kept repeating. I remember, I told you guys, I'm online, so I was having these arguments. They was like, well, you guys are going to hurt the movement because Medicare for all vote going to fail. Then people are going to say, oh, you can't win Medicare for all. Then they're going to stop supporting healthcare for some reason. I don't fucking get the logic. So they was arguing against the concept of forcing a vote because they're like, well, do you go through the proper mechanisms? Is it gonna win? But meanwhile, let me show you guys this.
Go ahead.
Forcing the vote, and I'll just pull this up quickly, has always been a political strategy for advocating an idea and raising awareness to your cause, right? Look at, and this is, I just searched my tweets because I always talk about the hypocrisy, so I'll just pull this up real quick. Look at the times that they supported forcing the vote, right? Look, the Democrat Party, Pelosi forced the vote on police funding. So they were like, they'll put it to the vote so Republicans can stop saying we're against it. So they forced the vote on that. Look at this. This is another one. They were trying to block, they were trying to force the vote. I remember Cori Bush. Here it is. This is the video I was talking about it. Cori Bush forced the vote where she proposed a bill that would have made convicted felons, it would have made it legal for convicted felons to vote, right? So then they forced the vote on that issue. And then she said, well, even though it didn't win, this helped us raise awareness on the issue. Right. Now we know where the Republican Party stands. And she was kind of lying about omission because she pointed out the Republican Party, even though over half of the Democrats voted against that.
She didn't say nothing about them.
Yeah, she didn't even mention that. Over half the Democrats. She was like, I'm proud today. I was trying to find the tweet. I couldn't find it, but just believe me. She said she had a tweet where she was like, I am proud to say that we introduced a vote that would have given voting rights to felons. Over 70% of Democrats supported it. It's like, Cori Bush, do the math. That is less than half of the members. So, based on your forced vote, which I appreciate that she did it, now we can say over half of the Democratic Party are anti-democracy. They are forced stealing and stripping the votes from people. But you guys see the political mechanism of forcing the vote and why it's useful for your movement. They were trying to pretend that it wasn't useful to have a national debate on healthcare in the middle of a pandemic. How would that not be useful for the movement? But anyway, that's my rant.
I can't even think of another moment that would better fit than having that happen during it. I literally cannot. Unless it's like where people are actually dying as we're speaking. I guess that could, like, if the urgency of the pandemic was even higher, I guess. But another strategy of the progressive strategy was adding Ro Khanna to the Justice Democrats and Pramila Jayapal. And in my opinion, later on in the stream, we'll have a video about this. But in my opinion, this may, because it's like we are our own entity. We're a Justice Democrat. Like, we're RBN. Do you understand if we say another figure who's already in the game, let's say whoever is Ben Dixon, we say Ben Dixon is now part of RBN. Do you understand how that just the merging of that means we're no longer Justice Democrats? We're no longer RBN. People are going to look at the views of Ben Dixon as now RBN's views, or we are friendly to those views. So it's like you are intentionally. Now, I do think that adding these two was to torpedo the original concept of the Justice Democrats. You can still have it, but we're going to really just make this another Democrat thing with people who don't take money, and they're never going to win. They'll win some here and there, but that's literally what I feel like adding Ro Khanna and adding Pramila Jayapal to the Justice Democrats. Your comments, Nick?
Yeah, I kind of already kind of gave my take on this, and you're 100% right, because I think looking at the whole like where Ro Khanna stands, where Pramila Jayapal stands, Ayanna Pressley was Elizabeth Warren stand. Like she was a surrogate for Warren, not Bernie Sanders, for example. So
you said Clinton too, right?
Clinton, yeah, she endorsed Clinton in 2016, and she was a Hillary Clinton surrogate. Right. Not here. Sorry. Elizabeth Warren surrogate. Last election. Right, so you know the Elizabeth Warren who smeared Bernie Sanders as a secret sexist. The Elizabeth Warren who was a plant of the Biden campaign. I covered this a long time ago, back when I used to cover these races. She was literally a plant. She attacked Michael Bloomberg right when Michael Bloomberg surged ahead of Joe Biden, remember? And then during the race, at no point did Elizabeth Warren ever lay the glove on Joe Biden, even though she got her start in politics challenging Joe Biden's bankruptcy bill in his support of Wall Street when he was vice president under Barack Obama. She challenged him, but she never attacked him on the campaign. That's who Ayanna Pressley supported. Ayanna Pressley supported Elizabeth Warren even when Warren did that sexist attack when she claimed that Bernie called her a sexist, right? So she was always this person that was meant to derail the progressive movement, and then the squad happily welcome on board. And honestly, guys, I don't know. This is where my take may vary. I don't even think the squad had that much of a choice. Like, I don't know. I don't think this. I think that's
of letting her in. You mean of letting her in? You mean
Nancy Pelosi,
they don't determine who's in their group. They don't make that. They're told who's in their group.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I'm glad you see why I'm coming with that, CJ. Because remember that interview that Cori Bush did. It was so revealing when she said, "My sister Ayanna was telling me we don't vote as a bloc." They sent Ayanna Presley and Pramila Jayapal, and it was like they didn't know how the AOC and the squad was going to be at first. They didn't know how easily they would roll over. Remember, there was like this period where the establishment was really, really fucking scared because they didn't know where this shit was going to go, right? So then they sent in Ayanna Presley, Pramila Jayapal. They're like, get these motherfuckers under check. Make sure these motherfuckers know what time it is. And you saw the squad. They didn't fight them. They was like, oh, I get it. We were just fucking with you. But anyway, go ahead.
Now, a lot of you know this person here. This is Alejandra Rojas. And she essentially became the face of the Justice Democrats. When Cenk was forced out. And she is essentially the person who has navigated the Justice Democrats away from the original idea. Is this person determining, hey, we're going to start taking PACs. Hey, we're going to start endorsing people who don't necessarily have all of our values, because the most important part is to get the other person out. This is the person who had the CNN contract. I think she eventually got a CNN contract. Let me tell you, CNN ain't contracting no one who's really challenging power. They're not contracting anyone who's really challenging power. Go ahead, Nick. It looked like you're holding your mouth not to say that.
I gotta find a receipt. I did a story on. I'll try to remember what. I remember I did a story on Alexandra Rojas when she made an appearance on mainstream media, and she said some stupid ass shit. I don't remember exactly what it was though.
I'm gonna cover her. I got some stuff on her.
Oh, cool. I
got a couple of clips while you're looking for that. I do have a couple of clips.
But she saw Cenk Ugorov's grift of the Justice Democrats. She said, "No, I'm gonna take this shit over. That's mine."
Yeah, she said, "I got this. I got this." She's like, "I got this."
Like a hostile takeover of the Justice Democrats. She's like, "Cenk Ugorov's sexist. Look at Cenk Ugorov's
she forced them out. Now, this is something obviously now, because you're just bringing up a point now that I'm thinking about the stuff that I watch. Obviously, maybe there was a rift behind the scenes, and then somehow they found a way of digging up the same. Because this is not new stuff they digged up to get him to resign. This is old stuff that has been brought up before. But we're gonna get to that. But let's get to first, Nick, a video where they're describing. This is the Humanist Report. Literally, I think this is 5 years ago. I don't know why when I watch it on here I can't ever see the full details of the date and everything. But anyway, I'm sure I'm looking somewhere in the wrong place. But anyway, this is like 5 years ago where he's describing this. All of the videos, most of them are like a minute long or less, but this is one of the ones where it is like 3 minutes long. We're gonna watch because we want to hear what is the original idea of the Justice Democrats and what were we supposed to expect from what they were going to do. So let me share this first video, and that is this one. This is the Humanist Report. I think he doesn't even have a beard on it. This is how old this video is, if I remember, or if it's very small. So here is him explaining the launch of the Justice Democrats.
The Young Turks and Kyle Kulinski of Secular teamed up with veterans of Bernie Sanders' campaign to launch a new initiative to take over the Democratic Party once and for all. So it's called Justice Democrats, and this is something that I am overwhelmingly excited about. Now, the first question, before we even get to what Justice Democrats are, is why even bother with the Democratic Party? Because I talk about how the Democratic Party is a lost cause and how they're rotten to the core. So why not just start a new party? Why not take all of the resources that Justice Democrats can raise and funnel this towards creating a brand new party that we're in control of? Well, I'll let Kyle Kulinski explain why that might not be the best strategy.
And all of the institutional biases against third parties are so immensely strong that we're effectively handicapping ourselves if we go into it trying to do a third party. It's like taking a sledgehammer, swinging it at your kneecap, and then saying, okay, now it's time to go run that marathon you spoke about. Well, if I'm going to run the marathon, I should be in.
That is a terrible analogy.
What?
That is a terrible analogy to use, because I was trying to just understand how does this make your point? But he's saying it's basically the third party is the kneecapping. Doing the third party is the kneecapping. That is the kneecapping, and then saying go run this marathon. Basically, the marathon is win this race. Go ahead.
Imagine them trying to explain this shit to Chris Hedges.
Yeah, I know. He would say, "What?"
And Chris Hedges and Kachama Shawan talk about all the time why you need an outside force. Right. And we see, like, we don't have to really debunk their takes because their takes aged horribly. Honestly,
right.
This
is why I wanted to examine this. I wanted to examine this because there's no debunking. Now we can see what you said 5 years ago that it hasn't come to fruition, and what you thought, how you thought this was going to be easier through the Democratic Party, because that's what he thought. I watched this full video, this whole video. This is just a clip. I watched the whole thing. It's not what how he explained it, how, this is the, basically less, this is the easier way of doing it. And it's my argument that actually this is the harder way between third parties, and because if you were to put all your weight in the third parties, it would be different. Go ahead, Nick.
And honestly, guys, this is me personally speaking. I'm not even shitting on them for being wrong, because I actually used to believe in taking over the Democratic Party. That's why I worked for the Bernie campaign, right? But the idea that they still advocate for this, and they attack anyone who advocates for anything different, it's like that old Cat Williams sketch where they just trying shit, won't work. Trying shit, won't work. They just keep doing the same shit over and over again. Right. So it makes sense if you had this idea and you saw, like I did, I saw the results of this, and I'm very scientifically minded, right? Trial and error. You got hypothesis, you test the hypothesis, and then if it fails, you adjust your experiment. They literally saw the Bernie campaign fail twice. They saw the progressives in the squad shift to the right. They saw the Democratic Party shift to the right, implement every single Trump policies after the squad was implemented. And it was like, we just got to push Democrats harder. It's like, you guys are psychotic. You guys are insane. Right. You guys are doing the same fucking thing. So that's where I stand, right? Where I'm like, I look at this old video. I'm not necessarily shitting on them for this belief. The negative part is the fact they're still pushing this, and they're still fighting against everyone who factually debunks. Hell, we don't have to do it. Time debunk their bullshit. But go ahead, CJ.
What I was gonna say, and also looking at these videos, one thing that's never really scrutinized is the selection process of the candidates. They were having thousands of people, and they're selecting these candidates. Who's making the selection? Why are they making these selection? What if they're more charismatic people like AOC, but they're a communist? Are they turning them away? You get what I'm saying, Nick? You see how the co-opting can have been done at the very beginning of the process.
Right.
If you putting only Jamal Bowman's in the pipeline, you're only going to get Jamal Bowman's in the end. You get what I'm saying? So that has never been scrutinized. Go ahead.
Yeah, God, Jamal Bowman should have been the immediate death of this strategy. I have never seen someone like AOC, at least, remember she did that Nancy Pelosi protest? Like, she at least tried to dabble in being anti-establishment. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you can disagree with me, guys. But I feel like there was like at least a little bit when she first started. She was like, well, I'm at least pretend to be anti-establishment. And then she completely folded after a while. Jamal Bowman never had that honeymoon. Like, literally the second that Barack Obama endorsed him, the second that he saw the party rejecting LA Angle, he was like, I'm done. I made it. I'm set. And I saw him get excited when Barack Obama praised him. I'm like, whoa, what was that? Until then, he was sounding just like a young Bernie Sanders. He's like, we got to press the system. We got to have Medicare for all. We got to stand for Black America, have Black agenda. Like, he was sounding fucking radical. And as soon as he
got campaign speak. Campaign speak, and then his reality basically is what they talk, how they talk about that in behind the scenes, political scenes. Charles Booker. I was just about to. That's funny you said that, because that was the next person I was about to say is Charles Booker is not the guy that I was told he was too by other leftists, and I'm like this guy, and I'm like But let's listen to the rest of this video. It's not too much, maybe another minute.
Should be in tip-top shape now, shouldn't I? I should give myself the best possible chance, not the worst chance. So, for example, the Green Party, who I absolutely love. They've had some successes here and there, but by and large, they are not what's viewed as a viable third party. And again, it's not their fault. It's the fault of the institutional biases against them and against third parties in general. But if you're a member of the Green Party and you're a member of the Democratic Socialists,
shouldn't our main priority?
let me tell you right now,
be
you are our
violent?
allies. I view you as our.
Go ahead, Nick.
So I was just gonna address that point. He was like, well, third parties are systemically marginalized in our system. Okay, so what are you telling me? Since we got two warmongering capitalist parties that incite violence on the community they claim they represent, which should be a non-starter for leftists, right?
Right.
So since the system is built against third parties, let's start now. Like the date of that fucking video. How about we start then to start making it viable? Let's fight. And then what Fiorella did, what the Combo Cow did, a lot of people who do research into election integrity. They're like, bro, I'm not even talking about like legislative ideas until we get election reform, because it's not going to happen without election reform. So you guys see what they did? Instead of having the number one party of the left be election reform so we can challenge with a third party, they're like, instead of doing that shit, we're going to take the easy way out. We're going to try and run in Democratic Party, even though we know that's not going to fucking work.
Well, they think is the easy way out. I guess, no, you're right. It's the easy way out in the sense of it's the easiest labor. We're talking about people who are not in the working class. So understand that is key. It's the easiest labor is to go through the Democratic Party. But the fastest way to gain power is outside of the Democratic Party. And it's funny, Nick, because I actually have video where AOC is saying exactly that. And I hope I get to that video before this stream. I don't want to have a freaking 4-hour stream tonight, but let's listen a little more of this and comment on the other end.
As our allies. So I don't want people to take it the wrong way. I need them to understand exactly where we're coming from. And if you read the platform of the Justice Democrats, we specifically refer to reforms that we favor that would help third parties and remove some of those institutional biases. But based on our calculations, our highest chance of winning and actually getting the policies we want implemented is to take over the Democratic Party.
So in my opinion, I think Kyle's logic here is absolutely.
This is the selling of it. You see how he sold it on these upstart streamers, and they're upstarts. They're following the bigger brother, who at this time was Kyle and TY. And this is you see how they've been invested in this since the genesis of their even streaming online, Nick. They've been talking about this all this time. So that's why they're invested. Let's listen a little more of what Mike has to say and why he's buying into this idea.
Absolutely sound. And I've kind of made similar arguments here. I've stated that, yes, unfortunately, we have to begrudgingly work within the Democratic Party, but simultaneously try to build a viable third-party alternative, because unfortunately, with our two-party system, with our single-member district plurality, winner-take-all system, it's really difficult for a third party to gain prominence in the United States currently. So I agree that it's easier to just try to take over the Democratic Party rather than trying to create.
I thought I was the only one that heard it. He absolutely has shifted to the right.
Yeah, that's the first time I've seen. Like, I don't know a ton about his work. I've seen obviously a few of his videos, and we used to follow each other, right? But that was when he first started, was an endorsement of a third party. Like, yeah, I think we need a third party. I don't even hear them say that no more. I swear to God, I don't even hear that part anymore.
Before this strategy, he was more similar to us, saying that the Democratic Party is a rotten corpse and we need to go. That's how he was. That's how he used to be.
DJ, you know what that mean?
He's moved to the right.
The Bernie Sanders campaign moved people to the right. Mm-hmm. Where if you used to support third parties, and now you're like, man, I saw Bernie's success. Now I'm for the Democratic Imperialist Party. Isn't that some shit?
Yeah, he moved people to the right. That is a great analysis, Marx's analysis.
A viable alternative. Now, I think that we should still try to build up the Green Party at the same time. But this is a great initiative, and I'm really excited about it. So the goal of Justice Democrats is to take over the Democratic Party by primarying corporatist Democrats. And so Justice Democrats, they're going to vet candidates that actually agree with the progressive platform. And they're all going to be signing a pledge, and they're vowing to not take corporate money. It's going to be funded specifically or exclusively by grassroots efforts. So their platform includes a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics,
Womp.
raising the minimum wage, ensuring healthcare and education are rights for everyone, ending unnecessary wars, ending the war on drugs, creating a renewable energy revolution.
This is literally beginning. Like, I mean, no, let's stop right there.
Yeah.
Just listening to what he's describing, the Justice Democrats, like when he thought what it was at that time, does this bear any resemblance in what you see today?
Guys, this is why they tricked me, man. I didn't have the revolutionary discipline I had now. I heard this shit. I was like, man, this sounds great. Like, it sounds decent when you first hear it, but then you saw how they didn't realize how much capital can. And this is the lack of Marxist analysis from these people. They don't understand that we live in a dictatorship of capital. If you become a part of the powerful and you want to continue to be part of the powerful, you got to do the bidding of capital, not these worker class movements. That's the only way you can survive in the Democrat Party. That's just the mistake that they made. But you got to see how far to the right they shifted. I ain't actually seen the original press releases since it happened, so I'm glad I get to see this right now. Cause like fuck, like when you hear that part, like I don't disagree with that. I just disagree with the strategy. They were like in endless war. Now every single Justice Democrat is voting for a proxy war in Ukraine and Russia, right? But anyway, go ahead, CJ.
No. Actually, let's pause here. We forgot to go back to a case study. He will be joining. I got to send him the link in a second. Let me pull up this other video that I'm going to send him the link so he can join. And also, I wanted to attempt to do call-in. We may not get to it now. I had the episode for call-in to set at 3:30, but we're probably not going to get to it until at least a half hour after he's been here. He's just going to join this discussion and this sort of examination, but he's specifically coming on because I reached out to him over the weekend because I found video. Nick, I found video. I'm preparing while doing this stream. I'm preparing another stream where it's left versus left, trying to understand the differences between reformists and revolutionists, and if we can build some sort of alliance. So I reached out to him to kind of begin that discussion because he's in the camps with reformists and with revolutionaries. So he's hearing. So as him being a fly on the wall, I want to bring him on to just kind of pick his brain and have him kind of have him with us examine their strategy. And then, just kind of think of ways that maybe we could possibly come together on certain specific targeted sort of things. So that's what Case Study QB is coming on in just a few minutes to do. But let me pull up the next video here. Now, this next video, let me actually address say a couple of things about this last video. So the Justice Democrats signed a pledge. He went on in this video. I cut the video short than I originally wanted to play, but the Justice Democrats signed a pledge. So he says, so we know they're going to keep their word, Nick. That's what he said. The Justice Democrats signed a pledge, so we know they're going to keep their word. Yeah, he was so young. Exactly.
We were so naive. So naive.
Now, I don't have to go. So we already saw why Kyle talks about why we need to go through the Democratic Party. So you see the explanation, you feel excited, right? You see the explanation, like you're saying, you're excited. Oh, I can't believe this. Finally, what I've been hoping for, the Justice Democrats, they're going to be militant. They're going to be the Tea Party of the left. You see it, you're excited. And then you hear AOC and other people talk. I'm going to give you a couple examples. Talk like this. And then you really start to buy into it. Maybe this is one of the things that got you to sort of buy into it. Also, Nick, AOC says about watering down her message. Let me bring that up. 1 second. I'll skip this commercial. And Case, if you're watching, I'm going to get to you in just a second, sir. I will get to you in just a second. So let me remove that. Let me share a different screen. This next video here. Yeah, this one. And then the time code is 640. So let's move to 640 here. AOC is on here with Cori Bush. And now let's listen to AOC, what she says here. on here. So I'm going to start at 10 seconds before she speaks at the part.
Rural America or inner cities and got faster Wi-Fi or better healthcare or better
whatever.
schools, that would energize that non-voting base that got out there and didn't just vote for him. They're wildly loyal to him.
Yeah, you know, and I think that kind of speaks directly to the question when people say, oh, these.
So I think we lost CJ there, but I think CJ gonna get case study in here. There he is. I think CJ is reconnecting. Here he is. Oh, there he is.
Sorry. I clicked the wrong button. So let me let that, it's still playing. Let me put that video right back up. My bad, everybody. All right, here he goes. So I'm gonna rewind it just a little bit so you can hear the part that you missed when I kind of went offline here. So sorry about that. So let's start it again so you can hear the full thing.
Cities and brought them to rural America or inner cities and got faster Wi-Fi or better healthcare or better schools, that would energize that non-voting base that got out there and didn't just vote for him. They're wildly loyal to him.
Yeah, you know, and I think that kind of speaks directly to the question when people say, oh, these ideas, who in Congress is going to resonate with these ideas? Well, for me, it's about which of the American people are going to resonate with these ideas. And what we find is that I believe that the American electorate, us as voters, us as a nation, are ready for a very bold agenda. And when we try to kind of water down that agenda because of fear of what people may think or et cetera, what we find is that we don't really have a message.
When we water down that agenda, we don't really have a message. That stood out to me when I was looking through footage, Nick, because that's exactly what us, us who consider ourselves revolutionary leftists, that is exactly the critique we have of the squad, Nick. That is exactly your critique. So it was very eye-opening for me to actually hear her advocate the same thing we're advocating now, and to say like what happened to her. I do see Case in the back, so let's bring up Case just so we can get him into the conversation already. I know you're what's up?
What's going on, everybody?
Case,
how you doing?
Yeah, how you doing today, sir?
Man, I had so much fun with my man Rome earlier. He gave me a rundown of Tour for the Poor. We talked about the one coming up in Kansas City with my man Nick. So he gave, I had a lot of questions like on knowing to find out about the nitty gritty of how he runs an event. And I didn't even know he gets there a couple of days before. He has to try to get the lay of the land. But anyway, it was a great conversation. Anybody in the chat want to go check it out? Check it not now. Check it out after the stream on the Case Study QB YouTube channel. I interviewed Rome earlier at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So much love to the crew, the RBN crew. Yeah.
You always say Casey's like our man on the inside, right? The boutique left. they like him because they use his clips. Like he made great video clips, so they use his clips, so he's allowed in. But he wants to hear out our revolutionary ideas. Right?
Hey, I'm a uniter. I'm trying to get everybody together. I don't have the exact plan yet, but I think that the overall goal is to get the left ecosystem together, and we're gonna figure out a way. That's why I'm here. We're gonna talk about that right now.
Right. So now we're gonna be jumping back and forth between building alliances and the progressive dim in stride strategy. They are connected in the conversation. So what happened was I started to go through this information case study or case. I started to go through video footage, just trying to identify the progressive strategy. It's so elusive because you hear Nina Turner say things like, have you ever heard of strategy? You hear like Premier Jayapal kind of refer to strategy when she's talking about not supporting forced to vote. So I was trying to locate what is the exact strategy of the progressive inside game, and I came upon lots of footage, watched probably 15 hours of footage of just and got a good idea of where it came from, who pushed it, and that's what I've been covering, or we've been covering in this stream. But tied into that, now we're examining the progressive strategy, but we're also examining it to build alliances, to say, where can we, it's at least me, I want to examine this. I want to examine where can we build alliances. And so I reached out to Case and I'm saying, hey, I want to talk to you. Because what I noticed, Nick, and you can chime in on this in Case, what I noticed is that we may have a lot of the same policy goals, but because of the way we're choosing to do it, it forces alliances that repulse the other side almost. So we want class solidarity. So we're talking about teaming up with people in our class. That includes Trump supporters. A lot of reformists are repulsed by that idea, right? And then on the flip side, you have the progressives who think that this is our best shot. You heard, we've been talking about this already, Nick. This is our best shot to go through the Democratic Party. Now, to do that, that means you have to align with who we call the imperialist Democrats. So you see, the chosen strategy has put both of us on the pathway further apart just due to the alliances. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how do we, that was my whole concept for reaching out to Case Study. Like, how can this be? So Case, when I got, so can you speak to, like, just the genesis of how this got here and your response to me talking to you and asking you to speak about this?
Yeah, we talked about it, and I'm just listening to the show before, I got on here, and I kind of like the way you laying out the land, because we could go back to where progressive talk came from, right? And TYT was the first major. Even before that was Tom Hartman, but TYT was the first to give us Justice Democrats, right? And the credit, I got to give them credit because they're trying something different, right? At that time, we didn't know that Justice Democrats would turn into what it became. Even we were very naive, I guess, in that sense, or I think you guys said brand new, or that. So they trying something different. The question is, when do you cut it off and say, hey, this is not working? And I think we're at the point right now where we see that the Justice Democrat plan is not working. So I think I've seen Anna Kasparian show frustration towards the Democrats. Cenk has as well. And then, so the question is, what else can we try? So that's where you guys came in,
right?
Revolutionary Blackout Network, and we had the General Strike Summit. We had the Third Party Summit. That's why, me personally, I'm the type of person where I'm like, yo, let's try as much, throw everything at the wall. And I think what's going to happen, how us coming together is going to happen, is when something finally clicks, when something finally works. And we got a glimpse of that when what happened recently. The biggest chance of that happening was when Amazon warehouse was voted for a union, and Chris Smalls got that huge success. And what happened? AOC was not with it at first. She said, yeah, well, I'll go show up, but then she never showed up. But then when the big win happened, now Bernie Sanders wants to come, AOC wants to come. And one thing I got to give credit to Chris Smalls was he had the method of, you call out the progressives who didn't show up, but then you call them in, because he could have said, hey, you guys wasn't there before, so the second we're about to try to unionize, you guys could stay over there, you're not with us. He said, no, you know what, we called you out and you want to come help out now, okay, come on, let's try and see if we could get this second warehouse unionized. So I think it's going to have to be a strategy that once it works, that's when they go. It's almost like the parade, the politician that they wait for the parade to come and then they jump in front of it, like, oh yeah, I was here the whole time. So I think that's what we got to do. We just got to keep trying different strategy, and that's what we're for. Like me, I'm developing the mutual aid political party. You guys are coming out with continuously having those like the general strikes, the different summits. I think those are excellent to bring people together. These call-in apps now is a great source. I know Nick has been utilizing that frequently, we were going to do one today where we can talk to people. And matter of fact, I talked enough, but there was somebody that Nick, the last call-in. Oh no, it wasn't with you. Oh, Nick, you were there with Savvy Sabs, Jimmy Dore. I was there, and we talked to a guy named Everton, where I heard his frustration, and he was like, how come the left doesn't use the system that we have right now for socialist means? And he really piqued the interest. I never heard that before, using the capitalist system for socialist means. So I had a whole conversation with him today. We're going to work on some kind of workshop where I'm going to hear about that soon. We're going to try to launch something, just a show or two, and we got to try as much as we can and see what sticks. I'm gonna stop talking now.
Yeah, your thoughts, Nick, before I move to the first point here we're gonna cover.
Yeah, that was that same position that Case have. I'm all about taking all your shots. That's why I think we need to support strikes, third parties, mutual aid societies as well. And that's why I used to support Justice Democrats, because I was like, all right, let's take this shot. Let's see what happens. It just now we are convinced the good faith people that shot missed, and we need to rebound, pass it out, try and find another way to gain power. But I think so many people, like, I'm a Marxist, so I always have class analysis, and this make a lot of them uncomfortable. Like hearing class analysis, because when they talk about corruption, they want to pretend only corporate Democrat or Republicans be corrupt. They want to pretend like if you call yourself progressive, you somehow can't be corrupted by money and status. That we've seen that is not true, so they know this strategy doesn't work. But
Eric Adams called himself a progressive recently. I clipped that. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Fuck you, Eric Adams. Fuck
a
you.
Pragmatic progressive. But go ahead, Nick.
I gotta do an anti Eric Adams segment here soon. It's been a few days, but when I see like so many people unwilling to use the inside outside game, I'm not talking about the outside game. I'm talking about the inside game. The outside game been here, and I would love to form this giant working class coalition where we can come together on issues. But we tried that. It was called Force the Vote. Like, can you guys imagine like the state of the left and left media if you didn't have people oppose Force the Vote because they had Jimmy derangement syndrome? Hell, if anything, that was the opportunity for like TYT and Jimmy to make up. Like, imagine if Jank and TYT like strongly supported Force the Vote. They probably would mend fences. Their beef escalated when they didn't support Force the Vote. So if you look at my old content, which I know most of you guys have now, I wasn't that big back then. But if you look at my old Socialist MMA channel, I'd never attacked the boutique left. Like I didn't feel it was relevant. I focused mostly on liberals. I focused on Barack Obama, Donald Trump. I started my critique of the boutique left around Force the Vote. And then I was like, even then I was like, all right, that's weird. But then the March for America for All happened, and they attacked the March for America for All. So I'm like, we are trying to reach out to you guys. Like, if Cenk Uygur, if TYT, if any of the Justice Democrat people with the squad showed up at the March for America for All, do you think we would have kicked them out? No, the biggest complaint we had that they didn't join us. So as far as I'm concerned, the people who are called divisive, like the RBNs, the Jimmy Dores, a lot of these radical Marxists and leftists who now bash the boutique left who joined the establishment, we was more than happy to throw a rope and like, hey, yo, you want to join our team for this? Remember, CJ, when we had the General Strike Summit, we would allow pretty much anyone on.
Right.
Like, if you was a boutique lefty, like, man, imagine if you was David Doe and he was like, man, this is General Strike Summit. That's interesting. I didn't think about that. Let me contribute in the panel. Instead, he did a live stream bashing it. Right? So it was like, Case, we tried. It's one side who rejects unity, right? But I'll pass it to you, CJ. That's my initial thoughts.
Yeah.
Conversation.
Yeah, no, we can let's continue with Case here in the examination of the strategy, and we're also going to be talking about we're going to be talking about how we can build alliances through some of these strategies that they have employed. Now, so where I'm at right now is just kind of explaining how the Justice Democrats took off. The concept of the inside game took off. The latest version of this, the inside game, took off through the Justice Democrats, and you saw what the Justice Democrat was described to be, and then I showed you a clip of how AOC is talking about challenging power. So you're hearing what you need to hear, and here's just another clip of AOC talking in terms that's going to get the base excited. That's going to get people that want to participate. So let's listen, and then we'll talk about it on the other side here. I think this one is about Palestinians.
Let me just switch gears a little bit. Last month, the Israeli government shot more than 1,000 peaceful unarmed protesters in Gaza. killing hundreds of them. And on May 14th, at the height of that attack, you posted the following on Twitter. You wrote, quote, "This is a massacre," meaning the Israeli military shooting of Palestinian protesters. And then you wrote, quote, "I hope my peers have the moral courage to call it as such. No state or entity is absolved of mass shooting of protesters. There is no justification. Palestinian people deserve basic human dignity as anyone else. Democrats can't be silent about this anymore." Now, as your tweet suggests, the reason why I think that tweet got a lot of attention, I know the reason why it captured my attention is because it's very rare to hear somebody in mainstream politics talking about, in such clear moral terms, denouncing the Israeli government's aggression and militarism that way. And it's particularly true for a New York politician, where the idea has always been that it is political suicide not to be unyieldingly loyal to the actions of the Israeli government and supportive of it. So I just wanted to ask you two questions about that positioning that you made. First is, did you decide that it actually could be politically beneficial to take that position, or did you believe that you needed to take that position as a moral imperative, regardless of the political cost? And then more broadly, do you see a relationship between these kinds of foreign policy issues that don't get quite as much attention these days and the domestic issues that are the focus of your campaign and also of our politics?
Yeah. To answer your first question, I think that really where that came from for me is my background is as an educator, an organizer, and an activist. And I think I was primarily compelled on moral grounds because I could only imagine if 60 people were shot and killed in Ferguson, or if 60 people were shot and killed, in the West Virginia teacher strikes. The idea that we are not supposed to talk about people dying when they are, engaging in political expression, just really moved me. And
so she's commenting about Palestinians. That's what this comment is about. It's like she's basically saying, because she was called out for this, like, am I not supposed to talk about people dying? Like, if people were dying in Ferguson, and she's making this example. And I'm playing this because I want everybody to see the contrast and who she was, because she represents who this idea was. The idea of taking over the Democratic Party. Look where we have come from the genesis of the idea. Look how far away from the idea of being an adversarial group have we become. Look what we're not willing to challenge anymore. Look what she's willing to talk about now and what she's not willing to talk about when she's talking about the Palestinians in this interview. And also what she talks about later in this same interview. I'll just fast forward it really quick. Look how she refers to Nancy Pelosi. It's almost like it's not the same.
I almost gotta watch this whole thing, man. I didn't even see this interview. This must be super crazy to watch. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing. Listen, I'm super scaling this down to fit 2 hours. I'm really scaling this. It's a bunch of clips I'm not able to get to, like all the interesting clips where you can hear a conversation between Jane and Jordan Charrington and Michael Tracy and Nominky Coons, and conversation between Jimmy Dore and Cenk Uygur, talking about all of this stuff. It's very, very interesting stuff. But yeah, I had to cut that out because it was just simply too much stuff. But let's listen to what AOC says, how she talks about Nancy Pelosi, and compare that to how she talks about Mama Bear now.
But I think it's something that our constituents understand on a very deep level.
So we just have a little bit of time left. Let me just ask you a couple of what I hope are quick questions. Your opponent, Congressman Crowley, has been pretty upfront about his hopes to replace Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer in the Democratic top wing of the Democratic leadership once they retire, or maybe even before that. For as long as I can remember, the Democratic Party in the House has been led by Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer. So if you are elected, Will you agitate for different leaders leading the Democratic Party in the House caucus, or do you think that Pelosi and Hoyer should continue to be in those leadership positions?
No, I think that we need new leadership. I think the idea that we should have the same leadership for more than one generation is probably a mistake in American politics in general. When I think about my opponent trying to take Nancy Pelosi's seat, it's like, why? Like, what has he done? And I think that what we need to really look at and value, it goes back down to the idea of valuing fundraising and equating fundraising with leadership. And they're not the same thing. I think that we really need to start kind of changing our standards for leadership and what we define and what we respect as a party. And it's not to say that, it's not to speak to Pelosi's leadership, but it's to say, what company oftentimes has the same CEO for 20 years, or, it's very rare that happens. And what government has the same president for 20 years. And the idea that the third most powerful seat in the country should just be rotated in and out by the same two people for generations, I think is a mistake in our government. Government is.
Yes. So your thoughts, just off of that video, then I'll give mine. Let's get to your thoughts, Nick, and then I'll have a question for Case.
Can I jump in real quick?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So this just reminds me I could do a shameless plug for the People's Gauntlet, because basically the People's Gauntlet is getting progressives on the record with a whole bunch of topics that progressives care about. And this is perfect because Glenn Greenwald was able to ask about the Palestinian issue before she became a congresswoman. Right. Because when she first became a congresswoman, I remember she did an interview with a white woman that I think she was on the right, and she talked about the Palestinian issue, and it was like as if she never heard about it. For some reason, for what I remember, I could be wrong, but it felt to me like AOC never heard of this kind of issue, and she was really wishy-washy on it. While in this interview before she was elected, she was really strong on the Palestinian-Israel conflict. So it's very important to get these people on the record. And also from what you said earlier, CJ, where you was talking about Justice Democrats, and you was like, man, how did they vet these people and why they didn't have it public? That's the whole purpose for the People's Gauntlet, is for everyone could join. Anybody, you could be at any party, you can join it. And we, the people, are vetting the candidates. That was the whole purpose of it. But anyway, that's my thoughts. Real quick, go ahead.
Go ahead, Nick. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll keep it short. But look at that compared to, remember the CNN interview that we reacted to? Like, she written that interview where she was horrific. like she embarrassed herself because she had no good answer for whether she would endorse Joe Biden, and that's the people she's comfortable with now. Like, she used to do interviews with Glenn. Like, even watching that is fucking like, wow, that's so crazy. Because she was on Jimmy Dore. I think Jimmy Dore was one of the first people that platformed her. And then you had Glenn Greenwald, who is a pariah among the boutique left and shit libs now, right? And she's willing to answer those questions. And then once they get elected, they completely abandon independent media, and then they embrace the political theater that presented to him by CNN. She went on, instead of talking to Glenn Greenwald about the Ukraine situation, about I guarantee you're not gonna see her go on a podcast talk about Colombia, right? And why that's significant. If Lula went in Brazil, you're not gonna hear her talk about that. You're not gonna see her talk about any real substantive issues now, because she preferred to be in a company of liberals, and that is by design. You gotta ask yourself why that is, and it's a shame. I think this is a lesson that we should learn. That once these people are granted power, unless we are heavily and hardcore attacking them, holding them accountable, they will shift just like that. And the progressive movement allowed AOC to shift. But I'll go back to you, CJ.
I always say you have to ask yourself, why is corporate media all of a sudden fine with AOC? If
all
AOC is the same, right? Why is she all of a sudden okay to be put on news, on TV, if they felt she was like a loose end, like she can say some socialist stuff out of nowhere? She can say, they don't have any fear of that. They don't have any fear of that. But let's go back to building bridges, building alliances based off this video. And I'm going to pose this question to you, Case. If when I reached out to you, I was like, let's see what are some things that if we say, hey, we'll come out and vote for your candidate, make sure your candidate get elected. What sort of things that we could get in exchange for that. That's where our conversation led to. But in this video, if AOC was talking about Palestinians, if AOC was saying we need new leadership today, if she was saying this still, she will be able to get people like me, like Nick, to at least take 10 minutes out of our day one time every 4 years to go vote. But if you don't, we need to hear not the virtue signaling. We need to hear you singing things outside of the okayed Overton window narrative of discussion. So I'm asking you, Case, if there was some sort of alliance, candidate alliance, where they say, hey, if you guys help us get these candidates elected, we'll help you with direct action. Would reformist leftists be okay with candidates who talk and who specifically call out Nancy Pelosi, who specifically call out Joe Biden by name, who specifically talks about BDS, who specifically, would they be okay with these type of candidate? Like if we were to say, if we're going to support a candidate, they have to be this type of candidate. Would that be something that would be negotiable?
So just to be clear, so you're saying like the TYT side, and if they will be okay with candidates calling out the Joe Bidens and the Nancy Pelosi,
right?
I think they would go along with what the people who are supposed to be on our side, on the inside, like that inside. I think they will go along with that because they went along with what I was on the side of forced to vote. They went along with the AOC side of no, we should not force the vote. And I think so they're just going to go along, I think, with what they would want, which in this case would be a good thing. If AOC was calling out Nancy Pelosi, if AOC was calling out Biden, et cetera, and Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, et cetera, if they were calling them out, then that would be a way to unify the left, what you call the reformist left, and the radical left. That would be a way that definitely we could get behind that.
That is what I'm getting to, is that if we, for example, I think his name is John Fetterman, Nick, you did your research on him. He's pretty terrible. But this is where we've gotten as a progressive movement / leftist movement, is that people like John Fetterman are now okay. And that's what we're saying. We can't support no candidate like that. But if you and I don't really see any candidate, to be quite honest with you, Case, that has out there, not even Summer Lee. I don't see her as that person. I see Kashama Sawant, a person speaking, using specific names, not saying the Democratic Party or saying leadership, saying Nancy Pelosi must go. And I'm here those type of candidates. So what I'm asking is, do you, not to you to speak for them, but do you see, just based on what you know about us and what you know about them, do you see that type of alliance being possible, where we're saying, hey, yeah, we'll help you get people elected, but your candidate has to be, this and this? Do you see something like that being doable?
Okay, so I see the process of it happening. I don't see it yet because it hasn't happened. This is let me explain what I mean. What we need is a unifying candidate. You just explained it perfectly. We need that candidate who wins and then holds that radical mantle. Because trust me, when this and a person that it could be is I believe Afeni, she works for a candidate. I think it's Michaela. I can't think of her
Michaela,
name.
Yeah. I don't know her last name, but yeah, Michaela.
You know what I'm talking about, Wilkes,
yeah.
Maybe. But yes, if she gets into office, right, and we got a Feeney on her staff, we got radical people on her staff, she's not going to be afraid to go on RBN. You know what I'm saying? She's not going to be afraid to go on TYT, to go on progressive media, which is what I'm waiting. I'm waiting for a candidate to win office and then do what they should be doing, or what I expect them to do. And see, I expected AOC to go back on Jimmy Dore after she used that platform to get into office. I expected AOC to go constantly back to TYT, where even now you hardly see her on TYT. So I think that's my answer. When we get that candidate, like the person that we both know that we're talking about, if we could get that person into office and then they reach back, and they have to realize that the power is with the people. Your power is not with the Democrats or with Nancy Pelosi, because they're the ones that's going to bring you the heel. They're the ones that's going to make you vote.
But what
for Israel's side. Go ahead.
You move a slightly, like a couple of steps ahead of because you're saying if they win, that's the negotiated part is how do we get them to win? We're not coming out to get you that person to win unless we, you know what I mean? So Mikhail Wilkes is not one of them in this scenario because she's already a candidate. I'm saying the way to get us to come out for candidates to vote is that candidates have to meet a certain criteria. They have to be vocal about BEDS. They have. So I'm asking you, is that type of candidate a doable candidate? Do you see that as something they're agreeable for them?
Yeah. Well, I guess it depends on the candidate. So my question would be: is this person elected? So, or if that person is elected already, then they have to do what we just said. They have to call out Nancy Pelosi. Now, if they're not elected and they want us to give us their vote, then they need to call out Nancy Pelosi. I believe Jason Cole is definitely somebody that I believe he's been on a call-in or with RBN before. I think in one of the summits that he's called out Nancy Pelosi. So that's somebody I would feel comfortable voting for, spending that 10 minutes, because he's already out there saying, hey, I'm not even going to join the Progressive Caucus if I get in the office. Like we need people on the record saying these things. And even if they go in there and they flip the script, we have the receipts and be like, hey, look,
I just want to be clear. I want to be crystal clear, because when we're talking about people, I just want to make sure it's crystal clear. There is 0 people I see doing this, and I'm including the person you're talking about. What I'm describing, 0 people besides Kshama Sawant has been doing this. To what I'm saying, to the extent that I'm describing. Okay. And I know
I might be an asshole, but if I see you tweeting about January 6th, you're out. Because that shows that you're willing to go along with whatever the political theater of the now. And I've seen all the progressives do it. I think every single one.
Okay.
But anyway, go ahead, Case.
No, that is a great point, because you just gave an example of the point that I'm making, Nick, is that I don't see. I just need to be clear, because I did this with Hector. I always forget how to pronounce his name, but he ran.
Osiguera.
Yes. I did a debate with him, and I was describing we can get behind his candidates if they did this, and he was like, "Oh, we got this, we got that," and I was like, "Sir, I watched your stuff. You're not him." I was saying nobody on that website. This is about the Marianne Williamson. I was like, nobody on that website is what I'm talking about. So to me, there is a clear disconnect on what is militant. What is radical is a clear disconnect.
Yeah.
From my point of view. Nick, did you want to speak to that, or did you find
I'll pass it to the case. I'll pass it to the case. The only thing I want to say to the point that I think Case was making earlier, the reason why you got the TYTs and their whole network of people like the Mike Figueredo. I know Cal not part of it, but he's part of that orbit, right? They are willing to go along with whatever Bernie and the squad does. Well, I think probably less Cal, because I saw him call him out a few times. But they will go along with Bernie and AOC, and that's the direction that they go, right? So they didn't support Force to Vote because AOC and Bernie Sanders didn't support Force to Vote. They didn't support March for America for All because Bernie Sanders and AOC didn't support March for America for All. A lot of them are repeating bullshit Ukrainian propaganda because Bernie Sanders and AOC has Putin derangement syndrome. So what they have done, they essentially became MSNBC and Fox News. So the same way MSNBC and Fox News would carry water for Democrats and Republicans respectively, the TYT is the MSNBC of AOC. The Human Report is the MSNBC. CJ, you've been cracking me up showing how David Dole, every time a progressive in news, like the Mickey Cons or something, he immediately comes out this is amazing. He's like the press, he almost like he's like the PR guy. And then it announces a race. Her candidacy. Oh my God, this is amazing! They they literally became the same thing that they criticized at first when they became independent media. How media is like this arm of politicians. They became that, but for progressives, like my last example, I'll pass it to you, Case. You guys know how many of the boutique media channels have apologized for John Fetterman? Like John Fetterman pulled a shotgun on a black jogger, and when he was young and dumb a few years ago, right? Young and dumb in his 40s. And then he lied about it multiple times. He even said a lie like, well, I didn't think the dude was black. Fucking jogging in the middle of the day. And he's lying about saying shit like, I don't think he's black. Then progressives like, oh, not that big of a deal. And then just like that, because they got influence, it didn't become a big deal. But I'm challenging you guys. Imagine if Donald Trump or any Republican was caught within the last few years pulling a shotgun on a black person who was jogging. Do you guys think that they will let them off? We just asked for intellectual consistency, right? Anyway, I want to get a case study because I just want to add to that thought that you guys had earlier, but I want to get a case and see.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say that I really enjoyed that debate that you and Hector did, and I think that type of communication where it was obvious that you guys were on opposite sides, and even at the end of it, you might not have come to an exact conclusion. That's the type of conversations that we on the left need to kind of get a little bit steps forward. And to your question, and I hope I'm kind of answering it as well as I can, understanding the question. I think that if there's no candidate out there right now, like that's what we need. And it's unfortunate if we can't even identify a candidate that would do that. You know, I wish we had a candidate and that would literally run on saying, I'm running in the Democratic Party, but as soon as I get in there, I'm jumping ship. Why? Because we did the third party summit, right? And not CJ, not JB. JB did the workshop with me that I did, and it was on the forming of the Republican Party. And I didn't even notice until I did the research and we did the workshop that the Republican Party didn't get formed until people who are already part of the Whigs, they're already part of the Democrat Party, they were inside those parties, they came out and said, we're turning to Republican Party. So we need somebody. That's a strategy that I know is frowned upon to be run as a Democrat and all this stuff. But if somebody said, hey, I'm straight up using this system to try to get in there, and the Democrats are going to try as much as they can to kick them out. But Trump just did it. He was a kind of a not really Republican. He ran as a Republican, got the nomination. The only thing is he wasn't a true populist that we needed him to be overall for Medicare for. He said he was for universal health care for all, but he didn't do Medicare for all, etc. I think that's something that I can get behind. What do you think about that, CJ?
I mean, it's the genesis of an idea, of something that technically, I guess, could be worked out. Well, another point I want to interject here is what I find weird is bizarre is that the whole concept, the whole branding of progressive Democrats or progressive Democrat candidates is that we're running against the evil corporate Democrats, but then they turn around and don't want to directly critique them. You know how weird that is? That you're afraid to directly critique the person you're saying is your direct opponent. But that's essentially the box that progressives are put in. And this is a reason why I was asking you about a militant candidate. Because the candidates you're putting up that's playing this nice game while I'm trying to take you out, you know how bizarre that is? Try to have a fight where you're hugging the person and swinging at them at the same time. You understand how weird that is? You're trying to hit them and you're trying to hug them at the same time. That is just weird. That is just weird. But that is the predicament they put themselves in. And we saw this with the Nina Turner race, where she saw last time her 2 bowls of shit comment kind of got her in hot water. She knew that was coming back. She knew the thing about BDS and Israel, support for Israel was coming back. So what did she do? She pivoted and did that. And how did that help her? Like, how did coming out of who she was help? It didn't benefit her in the slightest. It didn't benefit her at all. But now she doesn't have the support of the people she needs. So the strategy just alone of saying I'm going to run as a Democrat, not only that, I'm going to run as a Democrat and I'm going to be friendly, non-adversarial to them, that is problematic to you even accomplishing what you want to accomplish. So the strategy is bizarre. I don't really think it's a well thought out strategy. I really think it's a strategy of we don't have any other choice. We don't have anything else we can do, so we're doing this.
Unfortunately,
any of that, yeah.
I feel like you put yourself in no man's land when you do that, right? You put yourself when you don't go as radical as we know you are, right? In terms of Nina Turner, like that statement was radical in that moment, but then when you try to hug the Democratic Party and the establishment, where I heard that they said that her district is a plus blue district, is a pro Biden district, so she's trying to pivot there. It's like you have to pick one or the other, because if you don't, now you're no man's land, and now after 2 runs, I want to know who's her audience even right now, right? And I'm somebody that loved Nina Turner. I met her in real life, and I have a lot of affection for her. But it's like if after running twice, and unfortunately the second time it was less support because you sucked out a lot of the energy from the first run.
Right.
And then she didn't go as far like to that radical talk that we know she could. She's in no man's land right now, unfortunately. So I'm hoping that she can redeem herself in the sense of I'm not trying to tell her what to do, but hopefully she can make a comeback. I think because she's a powerful voice. But this is definitely an example and is a case study, for lack of a better word, for future candidates. You got to find out, how do you want to run? Are you going to run to your true values? Are you going to run to try to appease the Democrats?
That is the point, and that is one of the biggest critiques, I think, of why some of these candidates lose the support of some what they would call some of the more radical. It's we just need to see consistency. Just the inconsistency is what allows distrust in you to grow. It's that you spoke this way before, so can you speak this way going forward? And that's how you're going to continue to get my support. Now, since we brought up Nina Turner, I did have this already queued up because there is a section that I wanted to address this part, and this is where Emma and Sam Cedar are talking about how Nina Turner should have never said voting for Joe Biden is eating a bowl of shit. Basically saying not to speak radical as Nina Turner did. But let's listen to what they say about her doing this. Yeah, let's listen.
Yeah, so it's about 10%, right? So we're talking about a very small set of people who are registered Democrat and show up a lot for primaries. And they have very positive views towards the Democratic Party. And I think that's what you have to take into account with this. And it's always, great to mobilize people. And I think, but we over rely on mobilizing relative to making sure that people who are going to turn out all the time, because they vote in every election, support you.
So that's the big lesson.
Yes, Sean McAfee was right. Yes, that is my takeaway from this race, as it is of most races.
Well, there's a lot of people, that I'm reading that sort of agree with that basic concept. Is that to go in and to start either, and I think and it seems to me that Nina Turner made an effort through this race to appeal to those voters. The problem is that she didn't have the money at the time that it needed to be deployed to fend off the attacks that were sort of like low-hanging fruit. If I don't need to be a genius. If I want to alienate someone who is running in a Democratic primary from sort of those type of normie Democratic voters, I don't need to be a genius. If you've given me a quote where you say the Democratic president is bullshit.
Just let your Matt was saying this, let your surrogates do that, right? You don't need to be the ones.
You see, well, this to me illustrates another flaw in the strategy is because if you're now saying because the primary voters, and let me say what I written down here. So if the base of the Democratic Party, who turns out every primary, don't want to hear any critique of the Democratic Party, so how do you do that as you're saying I'm specifically running against this corporate incumbent because they're terrible and not deliver? You get what I'm saying? You see the predicament that they're put in. So it's like, so the kneecapping, that it was another video Kyle talks about kneecapping, like you're kneecapping yourself in this race. And I felt like Nina kneecapped herself in the race. So what are your thoughts on this part that they're discussing, that Nina, like, how do you feel about it? Like, Nina made this comment. It was a true comment. It is. And she didn't make the comment as she was campaigning, and maybe she didn't know she was going to be campaigning later. So she made the comment, but it's a true comment about the bowl of shit. But Sam and Emma right here are saying maybe she needs to leave that up to her surrogates. Maybe she needs to leave that up to somebody else. And it speaks to, and I'm just regurgitating this for Nick, and it speaks to the point of, how can you run against people that you can't even critique? Like, how can you run to say I'm replacing them, but you can't critique them because the primary voters are going to be mad because they love the people you're critiquing? Can you speak to that case?
Yeah, not only that, you have to be able to separate yourself from your primary opponent, right? Because if you are not somebody that is steeped into politics like we are, political junkies like we are, and you look at Nina Turner and Chantel Brown, from the rhetoric is how you would separate the two. And if you guys are both talking the same, Chantel's, we know Nina Turner's for Medicare for all. Chantel Brown, all of a sudden, I'm for Medicare for all too. To the point where when she got elected and was running the second time, the Progressive Caucus endorsed her without blinking an eye. So somebody on the outside wouldn't know, who's who. Oh, this person, they're both black, they're both women. Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, we're all with Chantel Brown. Okay, I'll vote for Chantel Brown. Oh, she's already an incumbent. Okay, I'll vote. You have to really find a way to differentiate yourself, to split yourself, and call her out hard for all the corruption that she had a past and corruption in Ohio in that district. And I think that should have been hammered at. And you got to find a way to separate yourself.
You can tell they have no idea how to talk to black people. All right, and this is the criticism I made in the Nina campaign, guys. I was in South. I don't fucking buy the excuses they're making. I don't buy it. I talked to the most conservative black people in South Carolina. Yes, a lot of these people vote for Democrats out of habit, but your job as the anti-establishment, quote unquote, progressive is to make the argument against the establishment. So yes, voters in your district tend to vote for Democrats and Joe Biden. But we know as progressives that the Democrats and the neoliberals have had destructive anti-black policies. So if you are Nina Turner, your job is to enter that race and explain how Chantel Brown and the Democratic Party are implementing policies that hurt you and how you are going to change that. Nina Turner was like, Republicans bad. Republicans bad after that. And then why would people who, as they say, is loyal to Democrats, if your message is Republican bad and your message is, Democrats not that bad, they better than Republican, why would they vote for you? You need to make the argument that we need to replace the old Democratic Party. They just don't know how to make that case. They literally don't know how to explain this to people.
Can I ask you a question, Nick? Like you ran for or not ran, but you were with the Bernie Sanders campaign back in 2016, and you were on the ground. Can you tell me in 2020? You said?
Yeah, 2020.
And what was your position? And like, if you were in charge of the outreach, right? What of Nina Turner's campaign? What would you advise her to do?
See, I was in leadership. I helped coordinated the canvassing efforts in Beaufort and Charleston. So there was we had a team and we was going out and talking to people. That's a big question, but let's start with this. Stop relying on national media. We got all these other tools that we can use. You guys see that we used to go on YouTube shows all the time. Why don't a candidate, whenever there's a smear job, just jump on webcam and start explaining and debunking these smear jobs? Why aren't you holding constant press conferences all the time where you have reporters ask you these questions? For example, let's say you Nina Turner, you making the arguing that the Democratic Party is anti-black and then voting like Joe Biden is like Ian Powell shit. Instead of running from that, you just have local press conferences so your local constituents can see you, and you make the passionate argument for your side. With the idea that you're going to be nice to the neoliberals and you're going to somehow convince these people who think, like Sam Cedar said, they think the neoliberals are good, but you're going to be nice to the neoliberals, but then somehow, for some reason, they're going to vote for you, even though you at no point did you make the argument. Can you guys see how this makes no sense? So then by doing that, and this is what I said about the Nina Turner campaign on Jimmy Dore. So by doing this, by repeating Democrat good, by softening your message, you turn off your radical grassroots supporters who can make up the money difference. So then another excuse they said, I don't buy none of the excuses. One excuse, black district. Black people don't like progressive policies, even though polls show that's the exact opposite. Literally, black people are the most likely to call themselves socialists. They're the ones who are most likely to support progressive policies. So their argument never made sense, right? So if
I was just telling CJ about this, putting yourself in no man's land, in candidacy, no man's land, where you turn off your radical left and then you're pandering to the Democrats, but they still not going to vote for you. But anyway, I just want to throw that in. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, and so by having a strategy where you run very milquetoast, you don't get the activism you need to overcome dark money. So now this is the last part, right? So if Sam Cedar and these people are saying that you can't run as an anti-establishment Democrat and win these races, my question is, why are we running the races then? So this is the checkmate I hit them with literally a year ago. So are you saying that your candidacy can't overcome dark money? No? Okay. You can't run as a unapologetic progressive? No. Why are you taking donations from working class people then? Do you understand they make our point when they come out with their nihilist excuses? Oh, it wasn't Nina's fault. It wasn't our strategy fault. It's just the district. Why are you taking money from the working class then if you know you're not going to win? Why are you running like a neoliberal Democrat if you know you're not going to win? Like, it only takes a simple questioning of these people to debunk their strategy, debunk their logic. That's why they never will have a conversation with us, because these are the questions we'll be asking Nina Turner. How does this make sense? Can you explain how this is a good strategy for you? Imagine if I'm talking to Sam Cedar and they repeat that crap. I can literally just, why are we wasting our money and resources running in the Democratic Party if you can't run as a progressive and win? If you can't run explaining how Jim Crow Joe is one of the most anti-black politicians, we are literally doing this for no reason other than their careers, which average working class people should have nothing to do with, right? So hopefully, let me get to your question, because that's kind of my rant on that. So what my advice of them will be, I like your idea. I spoke about it many times, Case, like having a mutual aid society in your local community, and you just so happen to run. I'm not saying that they had to completely reject the idea. I am saying the idea that you're going to run as an anti-establishment candidate and then you run just like an establishment candidate, like every single Bernie progressive does. How are you going to beat them at their own game? So it'll be a super long answer if I lay out like a whole like strategy, but don't do what you guys have been doing. Listen to the grassroots, listen to the workers, and make your argument with the plan of long-term success, meaning that when we have these races and we're trying to get our community support healthcare, increase wages, who gives a fuck if you win the first time? Nina Turner did worse the second time than she did the first time, because it wasn't a long-term community building strategy where even though you lose the first race, you got a constituency that's on your side that's for healthcare. They're like, oh yeah, maybe Democrats are anti-black. Then you run the second time, you get more people in your constituency, but they're not even working on these strategies, right? But anyway, hopefully that answers your question.
What would be? I'm just a rhetorical, and then I'm going to go to Case. What would be the difference if the money wasn't dark? Let's say you knew where the money came from. How would that change the fact that the money's there and you're going to lose because of the money? You get, like, these excuses to me are just preposterous, and the only way to beat bigger money is bigger passion, and you can't do that talking milquetoast. But let's go to Case, because he got to leave in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Here we only had him for an hour, so let's drill into the building alliances with reformists. So
yeah, you just hit on it.
Go ahead.
You just hit on exactly what I was why I thought of this idea, and because we can't keep running the same race. It's not. JD tried it. We saw the second generation of JD with Corey Bush and Jamal, and the same thing keeps happening. And then we saw Nina Turner run, and we saw Big Money to squash her. And I'm like, okay, we got to do something different, a whole different plan. Which is why, Nick, I would love to hear that 10-point. I know we can't do it now, but whatever that is, maybe we can link up later, because this is like part of my research. This is exactly what I'm trying to do before launching this idea. I'm trying to get as much feedback from the mutual aid organizations about mutual aid. And I would love somebody. I've never ran as far as volunteered and knocking on doors. So I would love to get the experience of somebody who actually did that and get feedback on that. But hopefully, and finally to answer CJ's question, like that, this was an excellent stream that we were able to kind of pinpoint what exactly we're looking for. What are we waiting for? And it is to unify us. It is that candidate that comes in with the radical mantra or sayings, not only before they get in office, but after. And then we need them to also continue to go on RBN, go on all the different networks, even TYT, even SAMC. I would love to see if Michaela or Feeney, I know we don't have any faith, there's nobody out there, but if we could identify that person to go on all the different channels and even have a discussion. I hate to call it a debate, but even if you want to call it a debate or not, but have the discussion. Even at the end of the conversation, you're still not at the same page. At least we're building something. And I think that's what we need. And CJ, thank you for having me on. And I think we need to continue having these discussions. And I think we'll get there. I'm optimistic.
Yeah, because I'm going to keep pushing you. Eventually, you're going to find somebody in the media space that's a reformist leftist that'll be willing to talk, because Nick and I, as much as we rant, if we have a guest, we're not going to be we're not disrespectful. Like you saw me with Hector. Like I disagree. I'm not going to.
You saw me with Destiny.
Yeah, like I'm not going to disrespect you. So you know, it's going to take these conversations over and over until somebody say finally, okay, let's talk. And then that talk is going to be, okay, well, this we can agree on, that we can agree on, that. But the alliances we're choosing to make is a key obstructing block. Yeah. The alliances that reformists are choosing to make and the revolutions are willing to make. We haven't made the alliance with class solidarity, but we're willing, and we preach about it, which they don't like. So
I just want to say before Case leaves, I do like Case represents the revolutionary optimism that we need. Like, it's funny when people throw out nihilists at people who don't want to support the Democratic Party. The biggest nihilists are the people I see without the revolutionary discipline. The people who say, the third parties aren't possible. Challenging the establishment and overthrowing capitalism isn't possible. Resisting imperialism isn't possible. So what I see our Case all the time is revolutionary optimism that we can come together, that we can make change. And we need more of that, to be clear. The only thing I would say to wrap my last thoughts on the conversation is I love the strategy you have, Case, but one thing I want to make clear is that our faction have tried. So there's like this, there's not you, right? But there's a lot of people who think like there's like this big war that's going on between progressives and the left. Like, this war is being fought on behalf of the people who support the Democratic Party, right? Yeah. And I mentioned it earlier before. We had March for America for All, Force to Vote. Goddamn, people always text my live. The Jones Strike Summits, right? Like, that's us reaching our hand out. So we need people to put pressure on the boutique left, the establishment progressive, not us. I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying the pressure is not on us. It's the pressure on the people who already had the power, who's locking the workers in the outside movement out of the discussion. Like, if it was up to me and CJ, and I'm sure CJ will agree, if TYT invited us on, we would have been on there. I would love to explain to Cenk Uygur what the left should be doing. I'm telling you guys, it's only one side that don't want to come together. It's only one side that keeps joining. But go ahead.
That could be true. That could be true. But do you want to shout out anything before you take off, Case? Anything?
Yeah. And I just want to comment on what Nick said real quick. I was just thinking, like, imagine, like you just said, that you would go on TYT, but let's say, I talked to you about running for office before, Nick, but so let's just go along with the case study or the fantasy that I have. Like, let's say you ran for office, you win office under the mutual aid political party, You know, it
I'm
happens.
going right for the CIA, guys. Right for it's on the platform. It's on the when you run on, I'm running on Boss and the CIA. Boom.
Hey, Colombia they just got their first leftist presidency. So hey, nothing happened just yet. But anyway, just go along with my little fantasy right here, right? So now you're in office. You think TYT won't take that call? You think they won't reach out to you and have that interview? You think that David Dole or anybody, Sam Cedar, you're an elected officer, in representative, they will definitely take that call. And I could imagine you going on the independent media the way that we wish we had somebody representing our views once a week. I think I might have said this before. Tom Hartman used to have Bernie Sanders on once a week. It was called Brunch with Bernie. That's how I first got introduced to Bernie Sanders back in 2007, 2008. And he used to go there once a week for a whole hour. And it was like a call-in, but you know how radio stations, they were the first call-in when you could call into a radio station. Yeah. He would take calls from literally anybody. That's what we're looking for. We don't see that now. Even Bernie, after he blew up, so he got too big for that. But we don't see anybody else really taking that on. So much love to my guys, CJ and Nick. Nick, I got to hit you up. I would love to know those 10 things that any advice you could give me. I'm trying to do this fact-finding mission.
Let's do it.
And now that I'm learning more about the gauntlet, I'll talk to you offline because we're going to talk more about this in the meeting and see if RBN is going to do it or I'm going to do it on my own. But I want to build a local chapter, physical chapter here in LA.
Okay.
Got a team of people is right by USC. I'm going to target the USC and the students, any communist socialist students to participate.
RBN chapter?
It's I wouldn't call it RBN. I would call it something else if that was my choice. But yeah, it's like a chapter that's doing the mutual aid work in the community, and I'm building it out from the community downtown LA. It's got a location already. I got another person who does the work in the Nickerson Gardens community already. So I'm looking to team together this new venture of trying to build the first physical in-person mutual aid community that's self-sustaining, and maybe a candidate can come out of that. So, yeah. But this is what I just had a meeting yesterday too with the person about this. And I'm just waiting to have the RBN meeting so I can bring this to everybody at RBN. But so all of these ideas can be. Go ahead.
Last thing I want to throw out real quick was that the reason why I reached out to the Twitter and I wanted to interview mutual aid organizations. I was at the point doing my research. I wanted to find out, how does a horizontal organization work? Living in the capitalist system all my life, I can't even imagine how that system will kind of work, where you don't really have that one top down, that leader, that president, that CEO, that position where they're at the top and they're dictating what goes on down below. But reading Mutual Aid by Dean Spade, and I'm hoping to interview him next month. That would be awesome to interview. That's an excellent book. I don't know. I first heard about it from Afeni, and I listened to the whole audio book. So I read it, and it's awesome. And how do you get that horizontal where everybody's the same? And I'll give the example of the MPP, Movement for People's Party, where you have Nick Bronner, and I agree with CJ. Like, he gotta go. If there's any way to bring Movement for People's Party, give it credibility again, and for it to move forward and be an actual party, I believe he would have to go, step down. And if I had that baggage, I would step down willingly. Like, I don't understand why he sees all the baggage that he has. Just step down and let somebody else take over that part. But it's because it's not a horizontal organization, right? He's at the top dictating what's going on. The chapters are trying to do their thing, and I believe some of them have gone rogue and independent. So that's another thing that I really, if you guys know, or anybody in the chat, email me at kstudyqb@gmail.com, Nick or CJ. If you know of an organization that's got a good amount of people, but they have a literal horizontal system, I would love to learn how that works.
That's the Cooperation Jackson. Have you reached out to them?
No.
Or have you heard of them?
No.
Cooperation Jackson. They actually go around teaching people how to form co-ops, and they could help with something, getting you started on the right path or something like that.
Cooperation
Jackson. Yeah.
And I'm gonna hit you up to get their information if you don't mind. Cooperation Jackson.
Yeah,
because that's something that I want to look into. Because I'm I'm trying to come up with this idea, but if somebody never gives me credit for it, I don't care. I'm all about creating change.
I'm sorry, Case, but I'm actually still torn. Like these one of the things I still bounce around in my head a lot, because I see the value in both directions. Always debate with myself, like, should we have a leaderless movement, a horizontal movement, or a leader in the movement? And I discussed multiple times. There's pros and cons to both. When you look at the People's Party situation, we're looking at a con of a movement that relies on leaders, and now this is completely without claim here, meaning it is irrelevant if Nick Brana has did what he was
accused
of, he was alleged of doing. If you look at the left, you look at the amount of people who don't trust him, it's so significant that the movement is more important than your career. The movement is more important than your ego of being the leader. And the unwillingness to allow someone else take over, that could hold back movements like I think it is doing right now. And that's the argument against having leader movements. The argument against having horizontal movement and having a movement without a leader is harder to have a clear direction without that man on top. It can lead to more strife, more drama. Another problem with having a leader is what happens when the leader, like Bernie Sanders, sell out. When you give away all his email lists, when he decide to just end the movement, what's then? If you have a horizontal movement, like I can go all day, and I know you gotta leave, Kate.
Yeah, my opinion is we don't even know what that looks like. Like me personally, and maybe there's organizations out there. So that's the reason why I'm like guaranteed. That's what I want. It's not even a question of if we should do a leader or have a leader, or if we should have a horizontal. I'm already at. We need a horizontal. It's just a matter of what does it look like. I want to do it successfully. I want to do it in a way that you don't have infiltrators. I feel like if we ever get like a building, a movement, mutual aid political party building, like I want to put on the wall that list, that CIA infiltrator list of how they infiltrate. And like everybody, before we start a meeting, we're going to read this and make sure you're not doing this. You know what I'm saying? Because anyway,
I always thought we should build a structure where infiltration has no effect. Like literally say, we're going to assume that we have 100 people in a room, 30 of you are infiltrators. How do we design something that regardless if we have infiltrators, it doesn't tear down the whole system? Like what could have the Black Panthers done to have that infiltrator, but it didn't tear down? It was the belief in that one Messiah that they talk about. The CIA brought this up. They talk about they want to prevent the rise of a Messiah.
Yeah.
That is
so let's not give them
things they have to stop. Yeah. But again, it's pros and cons. We were just talking about this. Like it is a frustrating thing for me when we don't have a direction. It's very frustrating that we don't have a leader at sometimes because things take a lot longer than they should. But is that what we have to give up in order to have what we want? That could be the cost of it. It just is going to be a longer process. You get what I'm saying? So that's just
be a whole conversation, a whole show in itself. And I love it. I love it. This conversation. I love getting feedback from you guys, and also to know that we're like-minded because I'm right there with you. We gotta anyway. We can keep on going. But much love to y'all. I'm gonna hit you up, Nick, and then I'm also gonna hit up CJ about the cooperation Jackson. And get more information on that. And look out. Basically, I have a show at 8:00 on the Case Study QB. Me and my guys, Political Junkies, we do a show. Ali Delsimer, who ran in last time, but she's out or dropped out. But she's going to be on my show. She's a great person, and we're going to do a show over there and have fun. And something that we're trying is we're going to give out the link for Restream, and it's almost like a call-in. We're going to give out the link in the chat. And you can actually join for 2 minutes and say something about the topic that we're talking about, and then we'll jump you out and have somebody else go in there. So, for example, everybody knows Holly Horn here, right? We saw her. Holly Horn jumped in on the show and talked for a little bit, and then she jumped out. So, anyway, thank you guys so much. Let's continue doing this dialogue, and we'll make something happen.
Yeah, we'll have to bring you on again, maybe on a weekend sometime or the weekdays sometime, whenever we're able to get back together. But thanks for coming out and giving your perspective. Keep your foot in both sides, Revolution and Reformists. You and possibly BJG but not after this Cenk thing. Maybe she can't be a bridge, but you definitely could be a bridge, and maybe Cornel West. I don't really see anybody else that's.
You know what?
Everybody else
BJG
is
had
kinda
a lot of
polarized.
grace for Jake. I'm gonna say this last thing. I give her a lot of credit because I sent her, or I posted a longer version of that short clip, and she saw it and she tweeted it, but she deleted it. She's like, it was the host that kind of baited Cenk to talk that way about her. So she has a lot of grace. I give her a lot of credit, but much love to y'all. All right, have a good one.
Take care.
All right, Case. I'm gonna take you to the back. I don't know how much longer you got, Nick. I did want to kind of finish the presentation, so if you want to take off, it's just a couple of more videos I got to show just to show the.
Quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm gonna take off because I had a call-in show. It was a pretty long day. But I got a lot of good guests lined up for this week. I took a break from guests after the Anti-Imperialist Summit, but man, so we got Delilah. She running for governor in the Green Party, but she reached out. We're gonna talk about policing. I'm gonna do the Uvalde police cover-up story. I'll plan on Saturday, but I didn't get a chance to do. And I think Carlos is gonna join us sometime later this week. Wednesday, Ben Norton at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I am bringing back my evening time slot. I used to go live every 9 p.m. Eastern, and then things changed, again because we are members of the proletariat thing. A lot of schedule changes happen. So my show I'm gonna have at 9 p.m. Eastern. Ben Norton to join me on Wednesday. Asal Rod, you guys remember her from International Elections Coalition. She's gonna join me on Thursday. So we got a week full of guests, and I'm working on something for Saturday. So yeah, this whole week we're gonna have great guests on. We just had a case study on. So you guys gonna see me a lot this week. So there was a good conversation, and
hope you rest up. You rest up.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long week. So I'll be watching.
Yeah, all right, so you can take off. I'm gonna finish up here, Nick. All right, Nick, I will see you later. I'm gonna finish up here. It's not much longer. Just to give the complete story of the progressive strategy, we brought case study in just to kind of talk about building alliance part. And now let's jump back into the chronological order of what's going on or what happened with the progressive strategy, which is really just the Justice Democrat strategy. So let's listen to this. So we're at the point where Justice Democrats have announced. We watched a video of the Humanist Report explaining the detail. We watched a video of Kyle explaining why it has to be the Democratic Party. Cenk is pushing this party in the background. Cenk is pushing the idea on his streams. He has the biggest platform, and he's pushing it and pushing it hard, pushing it for donations, right? And then this happens with Cenk. He is forced to resign. And to me, this is a pivotal point in the failure, or this is the beginning stage of the demise of the Justice Democrats, in my opinion, is when Cenk was forced to resign. This is David Pakman kind of briefly describing why he was had to resign. So we're watching about 2 minutes of this.
This is sort of a big progressive media story that happened during our vacation, so I want to spend a little time talking about it. The Young Turks founder and host Cenk Uygur resigned from Justice Democrats over some, I guess the best way to characterize them is sexist blogs that he wrote years ago that resurfaced. And I have some thoughts about this, but first I should kind of just lay out for you the basic facts and the moving parts of this. So first and foremost, the Young Turks, it's a progressive independent media network that started just as one show, started by Cenk Uygur. Years ago, it's grown dramatically. A few years ago, they did a $3 to $4 million fundraising round. More recently, they did a $20 million subsequent fundraising round. This is a relatively large, non-huge media company, I guess we would say. For independent media, or at least what started as independent media, they are very, very big. That's the Young Turks. Justice Democrats is a political organization that supports sort of more to the left progressives in elections, and this includes the primarying of Democratic incumbents that they find to be moderate to conservative, not to the left enough, okay? Cenk was involved in founding Justice Democrats. Now, to be 100% clear with you, last time I saw and spoke to Cenk was in October. I've not spoken to him about this. I've not spoken to anyone at the Young Turks about this, and everything I'm going to tell you is my opinion, and the facts are all things I've gleaned from what's publicly available. These blog posts written by Cenk surfaced from the early 2000s on the Wrap.com. The Wrap.com published them, and Cenk wrote things including that the genetics of women are flawed because they don't want to have sex as often as needed for the human race to get along peaceably. That's one thing Cenk wrote in these unsurfaced or resurfaced blog posts. Cenk wrote in another one that physical intimacy with women should progress in a particular way on date 3, 4, 5 between a man and a woman. He wrote about kissing 23 women and touching, quote, countless breasts in New Orleans during one Mardi Gras. And there were a few other blog posts that were similar statements in the blog post. What did Cenk say about this? He said a few things, okay? Number one, Cenk wrote that when he wrote these things, he was still a conservative, and that he doesn't stand by them any more than he stands by any conservative politics from his past. Cenk also said that the blog posts were exaggerated and that they were written deliberately in a satirical way. And number three, Cenk said that these posts and the statements in the posts have actually absolutely no connection to his views on these issues today. Okay, how much of this resonates with me and how much of it doesn't? Well, number one, Cenk was a conservative growing up, but my understanding was that he was a conservative when he was much younger. So like in 2002, that's 15 years ago. I think he's about 47 now. He would have been 32. I thought that his conservatism was more when he was like in college, but maybe.
Yeah, because that was a bullshit as excuse and a bullshit as reason to explain these blog posts. But again, or not again, a person who changes, if you're homophobic and now you're not, if you're transphobic and now you're not, that's a good change. So we don't want to dribble up people's past just to relitigate something they've already, let's say, apologized for. And I'm not saying that's what he did. I'm simply saying I believe in second chances. So that's not the point of me showing you this. The point is that this was a very this change here where Cenk is forced to resign, and I'm going to bring up another because I think that's enough of the description by David Pakman of what happened and a little bit of description of some of the blog posts because I don't want to go too in depth of that. But regardless of what was going on with Cenk, and Cenk is now forced to resign. The Justice Democrats came out with a statement immediately when this came out. We've asked Cenk to resign because if we're going to be this type of organization, but that type of thing. But regardless of what Cenk was going through, progressives and the left-leaning people wanted to realize this new strategy that they were pushing. So regardless of what's happening to Cenk, they still wanted this strategy. They still wanted to find out, well, what's happening with this strategy. Oops, let me stop. Actually, let me back up here. And then I am going to share you a different link here. Where is it?
Broadway's Tony Award-winning Best Musical is Dear Evan Hansen. Dear Evan.
Okay, so that's the reason why. Okay, so it's because this is by the same guy. So David Pakman actually is the second video too. So that's why I thought there was some sort of mix-up, but there isn't. So in this video, it's already muted. David is asked, because of what just happened with the Justice Democrats and this announcement and AOC, all of this stuff is happening, right? So there's all this energy behind the new progressive strategy. Let's get all the corporate Democrats out and put all these progressive Democrats in, right? Callers are still, they call and ask, well, how long is this going to take before progressives can take control of the Democratic Party? So let's listen to this caller and David's answer here.
Let's go next to our caller from the 609 area code. Who's calling today from 609?
Hey, David. This is Boaz from New Jersey.
Hey, Boaz, what's up?
So I just wanted to ask you a question. How long do you think it's going to take, or what is it going to take to completely flip the Democratic Party to be a better representative for middle working class people? We elected AOC, Representative Ilhan Omar, and let's say we elect Bernie Sanders, and let's say he stays in for 2 terms, which would be great. What is it going to take to create a progressive party and make that the Democratic Party? What do you think?
Well, what you have to understand is that if it were just a matter of the country being more progressive, we would have had a far more progressive Democratic Party years ago. And that's where you have to integrate into the analysis the effect of money in politics and the disproportionate outsized influence of big corporations and money in politics, because the population has been well to the left of the Democratic Party for a long time. When you poll people about healthcare, when you poll people about abortion, gay marriage, the war on drugs, drug legalization, even on money in politics itself, the American public is well to the left of where our elected officials are. And so what you have to then understand is that even though the Democratic Party is certainly to the left of the Republican Party, because the same corporate influences are affecting both parties to similar degrees, that is really what is holding back the Democratic Party simply moving to the left. So there's a whole bunch of different reforms. There's no doubt that if Bernie were to have 8 years and the House continues moving more to the left and Democratic senators are replaced with more progressive Democratic senators, of course, that's going to move the Democratic Party to the left. But to really break the status quo, you've got to fix campaign finance. You've got to potentially put in place term limits, which are also a factor that prevents our elected officials from just doing what the people want rather than figuring out, well, what are corporate interests going to do when I'm up for re-election if I do this or I do that? So there's a whole bunch of systemic change that needs to happen in addition to continuing to elect people that are further to the left.
Okay, thank you very much.
So as you can see, there was anticipation. People bought into this idea, and they were making calls. Now, this was the one where it was a clear question, and that's the reason why, because there were other ones where people were asking similar questions. I think it was on the Majority Report, but they kind of went off and talked about other things. And it's like, well, how long is this going to take, and when is this going to happen? Because they really sold this idea. But what happened with the Justice Democrats, as I'm bringing up the next video, what happened with the Justice Democrats is that they pivoted from the original idea right before our eyes, and nobody really sort of blinked about it. So just a rhetorical question here at this point, and that is, would it be a more effective strategy to fix election financing first before you try to run races to replace corporate Democrats? Because trying to use the corporate way, trying to beat them at their own corporate game is not going to work, especially when you're refusing to go far left as far as your critiques. Like, you can't be middle of the road in your critiques. You're not going to get that sort of enthusiasm to beat somebody who's out fundraising you, for example. So let's continue. Let's continue. So Cenk resigns. They're doing other bad decisions like adding Ro Khanna. I won't do that video. I'm going to skip that video. Adding Ro Khanna, adding Pramila Jayapal, which is ridiculous to add those two. But then they also, where is it at here? But then they also do something really weird, and that is form a super PAC. Now, remember, the whole point of them not taking corporate money and all these other things they professed. And you go watch Cenk.
Hear that?
You go watch the Cenk video. You go watch the Cenk. I guess is the Kyle video to get the long version of the explanation. But let's watch this one. Let me see if there's a time code for this one. This is after Kyle and Cenk resign. Other weird things start to happen like this. And this is Humanist Report talks about the Justice Democrats forming a super PAC. So let's listen. And this is a very, very old video. Let's listen to Mike speak about this, about the Justice Democrats. This is one of the changes right before our eyes, but we're treating it like it's the same organizations. Let's listen.
We learned about a Future to Believe in PAC, which is a super PAC started on behalf of Joe Biden by alum from Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, namely high-ranking advisors like Jeff Weaver. Started a super PAC to boost Joe Biden, specifically by targeting progressives to get them to be more inclined to support Joe Biden, which is not only a waste of time and resources, but it's not a good look. Like, even if you genuinely weren't being a rank careerist, it's just the optics in and of itself isn't going to make you successful, right? Progressives aren't going to be receptive to a super PAC telling them what to do. And now we're learning that Justice Democrats, a week after that, started their own super PAC. Yeah. Now, I will say that David Dole released a phenomenal and informative video where he does talk about the real differences between hybrid PACs and super PACs and how not all PACs technically are bad, because you have organizations, and we talked about this before on the show too, like National Nurses United, where they technically have their own super PAC, but they still mostly just take contributions from membership. But when you see super PACs started specifically at the behest of candidates, like a Future to Believe in PAC for Joe Biden, that's an issue. And for Justice Democrats, we don't have all of the details. We don't know what their intentions are yet. But I will tell you, I'm highly skeptical, because this is to support candidates. And the number one reason for us to elect Justice Democrats is to get clean, uncorrupted candidates in Washington, so we don't have to compete with all of the other corrupt figures who take super PAC money. So it seems like this flies in the face of their organization's entire goal.
It seems like that because it does completely fly in the face. And this change, we just kind of still moved along like, oh, that's nothing, when that's a big shift. This is a big shift in, if we're starting here, where's the finish place going to be? You get what I'm saying? Like, if we're starting here. So let's listen more briefly where he talks about this super PAC here.
Nonetheless, here's some details here. Politico tweeted, Justice Democrats are forming their own super PAC, the latest liberal group to adopt a big money fundraising and spending operation as the left tries to imagine a movement post-Bernie Sanders presidential campaign. And Zach Montalero of Politico explains a little bit further, Justice Democrats, the hub for insurgent Democrats, has joined the rank of super PACs. On Friday, the group's PAC filed a notice with the Federal Elections Commission announcing that it intends to become a so-called carry committee, which is also known as a hybrid PAC, effectively forming a super PAC in addition to their already active PAC. The move is the latest example of the party's liberal wing embracing the fundraising strategies that have been scorned by some on the left. A spokesperson for the Justice Democrats did not respond to a voicemail or email left by Score on Sunday asking to talk about the group's plans. A group of top aides to Sanders' presidential bid announced last week that they were forming a super PAC of their own to convince Sanders supporters to back Biden. Chuck Rocha, another Sanders aide, also formed his own super PAC called Nuestro PAC that aims to mobilize Latino voters. All right, so let's talk about the implications of this. I will say right off the bat that we do have to be nuanced here, because if they were releasing a PAC to, organize people or spread awareness about an issue,
this is the shifting. The nuance too many times is used to explain terrible, bad decisions or awful people, awful decisions. Oh, there's nuance. Like, there's nuance with Hitler. Let's talk about the nuance. No. So there's this video. Then he talks about a David Dole's video. So that video he references, where David Dole kind of talks about he talks about it, and he breaks down the hybrid PAC, which is essentially like you're able to have a nonprofit and you're able to have this PAC, and they can donate to the nonprofit, but the nonprofit can donate to it's all kind of just silly, stupid shit. Yeah, that's the best description. It's basically silly, stupid shit. This is a super PAC, and this is an indication, right? So the super PAC, so Cenk gets fired, he gets fired. Then they decide to do a super PAC, and then some more weird things happen. Now, this next video is of hold on a second here. This next video is of Ryan Grimm talking about how the Justice Democrats are no longer looking for people who exactly fits their criteria. You see the shift? So let me now. Oh, actually, I can just replace this current video with this one. So let's replace this current video with this one. And play that for you. This is 4:16, so it's about a minute. 4:16 to 5:12. Sorry about that. 4:16 to 5:12. So let's play this part. Now it's kind of hidden, where it's not a focus but if you listen, Crystal Ball picks up because she goes, She picks up this point that Ryan Grimm makes. He makes it that's not even the biggest point he's making, but he says it, but Crystal Ball picks up on it. So let's listen him describing how the Justice Democrats are okay now with candidates that aren't exactly fitting their criteria.
Voters believe, rather than people who are beholden to these interests. I mean, the real question is, how does that work? How does it move the
their theory is that a lot of these members are beyond persuasion. Or at least they're so far beyond the realm of persuasion that you can't even reach them at this point. So somebody like Richie Neal, so the Justice Democrats endorsed Alex Morse this morning, mayor of Holyoke. So very serious candidate, and actually not a kind of dogmatic lefty like a lot of the other Justice Democrats are. So it's showing a little bit of pragmatism to them. They're kind of saying it's more important to them to beat Richie Neal. He's kind of a conservative. He's a chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. He's bottling up Medicare for all. He resisted pressure to go after Trump's taxes. So they're saying it's more important to them to kind of take him out than it is to have the perfect kind of candidate that aligns with everything that they believe in, taking him on. And that's kind of a new development for Justice Democrats.
You see Crystal Ball's reaction. She's like, oh, shit. But let me rewind it again just to play the last, what was that, 15 seconds, 10 seconds? Let's listen.
To kind of take him out than it is to have the perfect kind of candidate that aligns with everything that they believe in, taking him on. And that's kind of a new development for Justice Democrats. And so the idea is that you're not going to persuade Richie Neal with rallies outside of his office or with letters to his or other kinds of pressure. You just actually have to beat him. Then eventually maybe you can persuade some of the others if you beat enough of them and they see that they ought to change.
So I let it play a little longer so you can hear the rest of that sentence. But what I heard, the most important thing I heard in this video is that the Justice Democrats are no longer really requiring you to meet all of the requirements that they started out with. More shifting from the thing you sold everybody on. You sold us on militancy. You sold us on adversarial relationship. You sold us on all of these things, sticking to principles. And then you slowly start and not taking corporate money. Then they slowly start to peel away at all of those main principles that got people fired up. So that's the point. So now let's go. I'm trying to do this quickly. This is really because what I had prepared probably should have been like a 2-hour stream just by itself. So then so it says now they did their part. Hang on a second. Now they did it. Okay, so that's the part I just covered. So now let's talk about how the Democratic Party has received this concept of the Justice Democrats. So let's discuss how the establishment has taken what they feel is an assault by progressives. Establishment Democrats feel like running primary challenges to incumbents is an attack on them. So why would they, in turn, support progressives? Like when we're saying, oh, Democrats, they're the party, they're not even behind this progressive. They feel like they're being attacked. And establishment Democrats are specifically targeting progressive Democrats. This will not end well for progressive Democrats in a corrupt system like the United States. So this example, I chose to pick a recent example. and this is Sean Maloney. Let's listen to, I think this one is Majority Report, talk about the situation with Sean Maloney and how he was given approval to do what he's doing by Nancy Pelosi. So now the Justice Democrats are trying to take over this group, and look what this group is doing. Some of the things they're willing to do. So that's what this is here.
This story, perhaps more so than any other, really demonstrates how little respect the Democratic Party establishment has for its progressive members. Now, this isn't surprising to anyone on the left if you've been paying attention, but this story in particular is so egregious that even some centrists are looking at it and they're saying, okay, this is a little bit too far. So the DCCC is the campaign arm of the Democratic Party, and this organization has one goal. The chair of the DCCC, Sean Maloney, has one goal, literally. It's to get incumbent Democrats reelected. That's what he's paid for. But this individual is so craven that he has announced that he's going to try to sink the career of one of the members who he is literally supposed to be protecting. So as Kenny Stansel of Common Dreams explains, Representative Sean Maloney, the leader of House Democrats' campaign arm tasked with protecting incumbents, has come under fire this week after declaring his intention to run against first-term progressive Representative Mondaire Jones in a newly redrawn New York congressional district, a move that critics have slammed as cowardly and potentially harmful to the party's efforts to keep control of Congress. Maloney, chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, announced—
Think about that. Them keeping control of Congress comes secondary to them pushing out or making sure there's less progressive Democrats. That's the strategy.
Announced his plan to mount a primary challenge against Jones less than an hour after a New York court released a draft of the state's new congressional districts, which are expected to be made official on Friday. Despite the fact that Jones currently represents 3/4 of the 17th district, Maloney's decision to run against the incumbent in New York's August 23rd primary received the blessing of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and some other high-ranking Democrats. The 17th district, which President Joe Biden won by 10 points in 2020, is slightly more friendly to Democrats than the 18th district, which he won by 8 points, and where many commentators believe Maloney should run for re-election instead. After being blindsided by Maloney's announcement, Jones' only viable options, assuming New York's draft redistricting plan hasn't been significantly revised, are to take on the DCCC chair or challenge fellow first-term progressive Representative Jamal Bowman in the 16th district.
So they're essentially forcing you to run against this guy who's responsible for getting people elected. So do you think he's going to be responsible for getting himself elected? You think that's going to be his top priority? Absolutely. So you can either run against this guy or you can run against the other progressive, the other squad member. But we want to pretend like this strategy is not terribly conceived. Is not being terribly executed and doesn't have this sort of blowback. There's too many things wrong with this strategy. There's too many examples to show that this strategy doesn't work for too many people to still be buying into this. And how can your strategy as a progressive Democrat and taking over the party ever be fully realized if the team you're trying to join is fighting you harder than the Republicans? And let's move on to the next issue. So another issue that this sort of strategy, this just a Democrat strategy, doesn't address is the corporate media participation in that. So let's say you have 100 non-corporate candidates. Does that stop corporate media from shielding? Does that stop corporate media from funneling people to the Democratic establishment? Does that stop corporate media from stymieing you? Like, it doesn't. So let's cover this. Now, this video is one of the longer ones, but it is an interesting video brought to you by, of course, Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd, he always finds a way of assembling some of the most, I don't know how I did that last time, some of the most liberal, conservative Democrats that there could ever be. He has a knack for doing that. So let me find.
Wow, that's some loud flavor.
My bad, everybody. So let's put this one, and I think that's the right link this time. It is. All right, so let's listen
At the request of my member.
Here. So there was a rift between Nancy Pelosi. This is before the Mama Bear thing. Rift between Nancy Pelosi, and this is how they're covering this rift between Nancy Pelosi. This is when, I think this was 2 years ago. This is when AOC was a little bit more, not to my liking, but a little bit more adversarial with the speakership. So let's listen to this story here.
At the request of my members, an offensive tweet that came out of one of the members' offices that referenced our blue dogs and our new Dems essentially as segregationist. Our members took offense at that. I addressed that. How they're interpreting and carrying it to another place is up to them. But I'm not going to be discussing it any further.
Welcome back. That was Speaker Nancy Pelosi this morning, hours after freshman Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez defied Pelosi's request to keep party infighting private. Ocasio-Cortez told the Washington Post, quote, "When these comments first started, I kind of thought that she was keeping the progressive flank at more of an arm's distance in order to protect more moderate members, which I understood. But the persistent singling out, it got to a point where it was just outright disrespectful, the explicit singling out of newly elected women of color." Now, AOC is referring specifically to 4 more progressive freshman congresswomen, colloquially known as the Squad, but the tension is causing controversy beyond the speaker and those 4 members. According to one report, Democratic Congressman Lacey Clay said it is, quote, "unbelievable that AOC is, quote, using the race card." He's upset, by the way, because one of these Justice Democrats announced a primary challenge to Lacey Clay in his St. Louis seat. Casey Hunt joins along with Sahil, Ruth, Betsy, and Carlos. So, Casey,
this is literally the most like bland, like assembly of the most bland takes of the Democratic side that you can assemble. So let's guess what they're gonna say, their spin, the way they ingest this news. So let's listen.
we heard yesterday Nancy Pelosi say she never has regrets. She doesn't look backwards. Same Nancy Pelosi today.
And I think it's going to be the same Nancy Pelosi tomorrow, Chuck. Although I will say that you could see that flash of irritation from her. And, you know, she went on to another reporter asked a follow-up question on the same topic. And, you know, she snapped a little bit and said, you know what, I'm not going to talk anymore about this, when she has previously maintained a relatively good-natured facade about it. So I think that speaks to the underlying emotion here and the fact that this has all taken a sharper turn in the last couple of weeks. I do think that tweet from, it was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's chief of staff, who tweeted, he compared blue dog moderate Democrats to Southern Democrats from the 40s, functionally segregationists. Right. That really did anger a lot of people and was really the focus of Pelosi's comments yesterday.
That's too radical for them. Like that's cakewalk of a criticism gets this sort of blowback
yesterday. But I think that, you know, you have this bigger issue where Pelosi's now saying, look, I'm going to handle this privately. But the problem is she did an interview with Maureen Dowd in the New York Times where she talked about AOC and her quote unquote public whatever and compared that to the fact that they only have 4 votes here in the House. Now, that's always how Pelosi's done business. She's a vote counter.
This is the part we're getting to. So listen to how they describe, you only have 4 votes. Yeah, you only have, listen to how they're trying to make it seem like they have no power, but they do. But listen.
That's the question I have. Sahil, you spent a lot of time up in the Hill there. And I don't think Nancy Pelosi fears them yet because, as she pointed out, they got 4 votes. This isn't the Freedom Caucus yet. That's right. They don't have a block yet. Moderates have a bigger block to essentially hold her hostage sometimes on votes that maybe she knows the progressives aren't going to like. They seem to have more power over her than the Squad right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a Cold War brewing between the Squad and Speaker Pelosi for a while now, and she is right that they are only 4 votes. She has pointed that out on numerous occasions, and I think what's going on here is that there is a frustration and an irritation among many Democrats, including new members, including moderate members, that these 4 new young women are getting a lot of the attention and kind of setting the conversation.
Now imagine if they continue to have this sort of adversarial relationship and to push the limits of that. You see how it's making news? Wouldn't that be a way of forcing the public to talk about certain issues? So why did they stop being this adversarial? What's the point in that? That it was the whole point of the Justice Democrats. I mean, we can finally, not finally, but I mean, we all know that what the Justice Democrats started out to be is not who they are today, and the execution of the Justice Democrat plan has been poor, to say the least. So let's see if I have one more to wrap this up. Oh, this is a good video here. So another huge issue with running as a Democrat is you have to accept the party structure of incrementalism. The Democratic Party is about incrementalism. So if you're a progressive Democrat, you have to go by that structure. And incrementalism is the death knell of progress, because if you're always behind, you can never get ahead. So you're always behind with incrementalism, and the minimum wage fight is a perfect example of this. When we want $15, when we need $15, we don't give $15. When we need $30 an hour, that's when we're going to give $15 an hour. And then when we need $40 an hour, that's when we're going to get $20 an hour. You see how you're always behind with incrementalism? You're always behind. You're never making full progress. And of all people, Anna Kasparia breaks this down in this next video here. Oops. Oh, I keep doing that. Something I'm doing here. What am I not doing here? Copy link. Okay, so let's try it again. What's this? All right, so let's listen to Anna. I think I'm saying her name, Kasparian. Not I said Kasparia, but Kasparian. She talks. Oh, this is a commercial. She talks about why she because she answers the question: is it better to get? Because this is what corporate and moderate Democrats. Isn't it better to get nothing, to get something, than to get nothing? And she's answering the question the way that I would answer it, and the answer to that question is no. It's not better to get something compared to getting nothing. And here's the reason why. The people who are giving you the incrementalist answer don't see it as incrementalism. They're seeing it as, okay, I'm done with this. You're seeing it as incrementalism. They're seeing it as, I'm done with this topic and I don't need to come back. Same, it happens all the time with minimum wage. Oh, we finally got to 15. You know how it goes. So let's listen to Anna. This is second to last video in this here.
Behind the pared back budget reconciliation bill.
So this is in the context of caving. We all remember when they caved, we got to vote for both bills. We got to vote for the I think infrastructure is called, and the BBD. We got to vote for both at the same time. She's talking about having frustrations after they cave, right? They cave and are okay with voting for this split, but then she's saying, well, who cares? Because the bill has been stripped down so much, it's a terrible bill. We don't want this incrementalism. So let's listen to Anna break this down.
The same bill that we learned today will not include a billionaire tax on unrealized gains. The same bill that has now completely cut out 2 years of free community college and paid family and medical leave. That's completely gone. We don't even get 4 weeks. They don't even get 4 weeks. Gone. But progressives, unfortunately, are lining up in support with a few exceptions. Now, not every progressive is on the record, to be fair. Let's give them time. Maybe by tomorrow we'll have a better understanding of how many progressives in the Progressive Caucus plan on voting no. But we do know that Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has committed to voting no on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. That's the corporate handout bill that was separated out of the budget reconciliation bill as the corporate favorite. That's the one that corporate Democrats desperately want. That's the one that Republicans desperately want, because that's the one that corporations desperately want. That's the bill that privatizes public infrastructure. They love it. Oh, wait, we get to take public infrastructure and implement tolls and fees. So Americans who need to commute to work are gonna have to pay just to get to work. Awesome, awesome. They love it. The budget reconciliation bill, which was supposed to be the human infrastructure bill, the bill that was supposed to actually materially improve the lives of workers, that's been pared back to something that's unrecognizable. So again, AOC says, I'm voting no on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And I think that's the right way to go about it. That is the right strategy. But what about the rest of the Democrats who spoke to the Associated Press? Well, just to remind you all, Manchin forced Democrats to drop language finding utilities that don't move away from heavily polluting fuels and rewarding those that do, which was a pillar of their climate change plan. So that was also cut out of the reconciliation bill. But Mazie Hirono, Democrat, says this: of course I don't like it, she says, of the outside influence moderates have had in compressing the package and erasing some of its provisions. These are all things that we've been fighting for decades. But she said with democratic unity needed, the party should use the bill to open the door to its priorities and then try extending and expanding them later. Just like they did with the Affordable Care Act, guys. Remember how the Affordable Care Act was just meant to be the foundation of healthcare reform? And then Democrats were gonna fight like hell to really build upon that, really expand that, right? Is that what they did? No, they didn't do that at all. In fact, Republicans under the Trump administration succeeded in doing away with the mandate, which was one of the ways to keep premiums low in the Affordable Care Act. I mean, it's a disaster. So not only did they fail in expanding the Affordable Care Act, they also failed in mitigating the damage that's been done by the Republican Party. But let's give you some more statements. Here's Representative Jim McGovern, who says, at the end of the day, we have to accomplish something. We have to deal with the reality in which we're living. So the question is, would we prefer not getting anything, or would we prefer something that can at least be a down payment on some of the transformational programs that we want?
They always say that, and that down payment ends up being the final payment. They always say that. This is a down payment on civil rights.
All right, let's be clear about something. This bill, the reconciliation bill, is not transformational, with the exception of universal pre-K, assuming that that doesn't get cut. That's the only thing that I've seen so far that has not been pared back. But wait, who knows what the future holds? So as it stands today, it's not really transformational. Do Democrats really want it? He says transformational programs that we want. Do you really want it? Because if you really want it, you'd vote no on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Because as things stand today, corporatists want that bipartisan infrastructure bill way more than progressives want the reconciliation bill, because the reconciliation bill is unrecognizable at this point. It doesn't include most of the major provisions that they claim they really want, that they claim they've been fighting for. So why would they give corporatists a win? Progressives actually have way more leverage than they realize. The question is, are they gonna use that leverage? And it seems that there are several progressives in the so-called progressive caucus who are unwilling to use that leverage.
And that's the point of this whole strategy being a complete failure. Because the bottom line is this: we can get into, I talked about how the Justice Democrats, the resignation, the super PACs, all of that. With all of that could have happened. But if they just stand their ground, things would be better than what they are. That's it. So all of the things that happened to the strategy and not winning and all that stuff, but just think about one singular thing you could do, and that's standing firm to your principles, standing your ground. That's it. People care that you're fighting, not necessarily that you have won. And JB says this all the time. He's like the struggle, or he's like I forget how he says it, but he says it's in the fight. The meaning is in the fight, not necessarily the win. Because if we know you're fighting as hard as you can, that is the win. And maybe that's how he described it. And I'm going to leave you with this final video here. Let's see if I can copy this and not make that same mistake. And this will be the final video. I'll stop it here before she gets too far into. She does go into more incrementalism talk, but there's like 6 more minutes of video, and I don't want to do that. So let's bring it to this final part. And this is a question to ask. Is that, okay, do we not understand who the Democratic Party is? So let's say the strategy you have of taking over the party. Do you think they're just going to sit back and let you take over this party? Or do you think they're going to try every tactic in the book, including cheating? And if you don't think they're cheaters, let's listen to this video and learn, not learn, but let's revisit the extent of what the Democratic Party is willing to do in order for progressives not to take over the party.
So, Jake, one of the things I'm sure people are going to be watching is Bernie Sanders, and I know he's on your show today.
He is, and we have some big questions for him after this DNC leak. As you know, somebody hacked into the DNC computer, and WikiLeaks just recently published a bunch of these emails, and there are a number of emails in which senior officials of the Democratic National Committee can be seen conspiring against Bernie Sanders, talking about how his faith should be asked about before the Kentucky or West Virginia primaries, talking about hit pieces to pitch to reporters about his campaign allegedly being in disarray. It is ugly. And, you know, as they say, it ain't paranoia if they're actually out to get you. The effect of this is going to be big. We need to see, what is Bernie Sanders going to say? How is this going to impact the millions of Americans who voted for Bernie Sanders? One of the reasons for which was because they hated what they saw as a corrupt political system. And voila, here is evidence of that corrupt political system. It is a potential bombshell, and we'll see how it impacts the Philadelphia Democratic Convention.
You don't think there's any chance that, especially since there have been some concessions made, we should say, regarding superdelegates' role at their convention, there's no chance that Bernie Sanders is going to pull out of his role at the convention? He is still solidly behind Hillary, yes?
I think so. The Sanders campaign, the Sanders apparatus put out a statement this morning saying that Bernie Sanders is going to be speaking, I believe, Monday night, and he still stands very much behind Hillary Clinton. So I think that was trying to show people that Sanders, despite the DNC leak, is still on board. But you know something? I have no idea what's going to happen. And even if Sanders does express full-throated support for Hillary Clinton, there's no whitewashing the fact that these emails really reveal something very untoward. And if you're a Sanders supporter, something very disturbing. Senior officials at the Democratic National Committee conspiring against somebody pursuing the Democratic presidential nomination, despite the fact that the DNC insisted the whole time that they were staying neutral. These emails show they were not staying neutral. They were openly conspiring against a Democratic presidential candidate, and that could really make some ugly headlines here in Philadelphia.
So I'm gonna leave it there, but you see what the Democratic Party is willing, and I'm gonna pause this here. What the Democratic Party is willing to do in order for the progressive flank not to take over it. So this was a long stream, but I wanted to cover this strategy, because I feel like this is a strategy we keep dealing with in fighting this sort of so-called infighting, this bickering that's going back and forth. It's one thing to just kind of, oh, that's a what terrible strategy. I wanted to examine it. I wanted to find the videos. I wanted to hear from their own voices why this strategy. And we heard Cenk and we heard from Kyle to say why it has to be the Democratic Party. We heard from people from the Humanist Report to why he, believes that Kyle is right and that it has to be the Democratic Party. We now understand, or I understand, why a lot of the reformist leftists in the media sphere really push this, because they are the ones who decided to convince most of the left of this. So it's kind of like it's their baby, it's their thing that has to be pushed through. But at this time, even they have to be acknowledging, and it sounds like from case study QB, he's like they're acknowledging like this is not working. This is not working. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for joining me for this stream. I did a long stream because I knew I wasn't going to be back tomorrow or a couple of days. I don't know when I'm going to be back. So like this stream, I'm going to throw up some comments on the way out, but like this stream, let's see where we're at here on your way out. I don't even know where we're at with the likes, but I'm going to check right now. All righty, we are at 350. Let's see if we can get 25 more. We got a lot of new people who weren't here in the beginning, this still watching. So if we can get to 25 more, maybe get to like 375, that'll be great. I'm going to toss up your comments as our final video plays, our closing video plays. I'm going to toss up your comments. So thank you for joining me for this stream. Please like it. Please share. Please subscribe to RBN. And if you're able to donate, we have our donation links there at the bottom. And thank you for joining me today. I'm one of your hosts, and this is the Nick and CJ Show. Thank you for joining. I'll talk to you later.